Chapter 871. Back to the main topic. In order to save Planet Azure Dragon, which was in danger, Liuyan Ling, the Blood Demon Sword, and the Big Dipper Sword had to rush to Planet Azure Dragon. However, this brought about another problem, and that was what to do about Planet Suzaku. Once Liuyan Ling and the others left, only Guhan and Hongyu, who didn't have the Ju Qian Star's time banner, would be left on Planet Suzaku's battlefield. If some Wu people came to pick up the slack, wouldn't they be finished? At the thought of this, Ji Yuhan's heart skipped a beat and he walked in front of Hongyu. Seeing Guhan appear before her, Hongyu was very impatient. She didn't have a good impression of this man, so she scolded him. "What are you still doing here? Hurry up and go to the sun to carry out the flag planting ceremony. Don't just stand here like a piece of trash." "Your Excellency Suzaku, I just suddenly remembered something and wanted to ask you," Guhan said with a smile. "If you have something to say, then say it." Hongyu's expression became even colder. Because Hongyu was once his teammate, Guhan wasn't angry at Hongyu's disdain. Instead, he found it a bit interesting. If Hongyu knew that he was the military governor, what would her expression be like? Of course, Guhan didn't want to expose his identity. He could only say, "It's like this. I've been thinking that the Wu people might be playing a trick to lure the tiger away from the mountain, by strengthening the attack on Planet Azure Dragon. Miss Ling, the Blood Demon Queen, and the Big Dipper Queen were all transferred to Planet Azure Dragon. However, the Wu people who evacuated from Planet Taiyin directly attacked Planet Suzaku. It has to be said that the distance from Planet Taiyin to Planet Suzaku is shorter than the distance from Planet Taiyin to Planet Azure Dragon. Also, right now, we are the only two people left on Planet Suzaku. That's right, we don't have the Ju Qian Star's time banner, so we are just two useless commoners. If the Wu people really come, I'm afraid we won't even last a second." Hearing Guhan's words, Hongyu, who had a disdainful expression, suddenly became terrified. Guhan's words were too terrifying. If what Guhan said was true and the Wu people were really playing a trick, then Planet Suzaku without a sword holder to defend would be like a piece of fatty meat cooked in a bowl. The Wu people would only need to take a small bite. Thinking that this might happen, Hongyu's body naturally trembled in fear. She almost subconsciously wanted to contact the Blood Demon Queen and the Big Dipper Queen and ask them to come back. Only then would they have the power to fight. No. Ji Yuhan stopped Hongyu in time. "That's just my guess. Besides, the situation on Green Dragon Planet is indeed urgent. If they can't get there in time, Green Dragon Planet won't be able to hold out for long. Besides, the Sorcerer Tribe might be able to change their target at any time. You won't be able to achieve anything by mobilizing them like this. Then what do you think we should do?" Hongyu panicked. She could only ask Guhan, the man she hated, for a solution to the problem. "Simple. As long as you can recover your battle strength, it'll be fine." Guhan patted Hongyu's shoulder. "This place should be quite close to the sun. How long would it take for you to go back and forth as fast as you can? If we have a hovercraft, 10 minutes should be enough," Hongyu said without hesitation. It was obvious that she often traveled between the sun and Suzaku, so she knew the distance between the two very well. "Then hurry up and go." Guhan tapped his personal terminal. "According to my calculations, if the Wu people head straight for Planet Suzaku after they come out of the lunar star, it will take them at least 15 minutes. You have 11 minutes left. If you don't waste time, you can get an extra minute. It's no use. I thought you had some good idea." Hongyu looked depressed. "These 10 minutes are the time it takes to sit in a hovercraft, but all the hovercrafts around here have been destroyed. Where am I going to find one? I do have a hovercraft in my dimensional pocket, but I don't have the sword element now, so I can't open my dimensional pocket." "That's not necessarily true." Guhan suddenly pointed at a bush in the distance. "That's one of your people, right? Go ask her and see if she has a maglev hovercraft in her dimensional pocket." "There's someone there." Hearing Guhan's words, Hongyu was very confused. This was because the bush was about 2 kilometers away from her current position. To an ordinary person, the bush was about the size of a green pixel. How could they see if there was anyone in the bush? Although she was 99.9% sure that Guhan was lying to her, Hongyu still held onto that 0.1% hope and shouted at her personal terminal, "Little sheep, don't hide. Hurry up and come out." Just as Guhan said, a white little sheep rolled out of the bush. Of course, this was not the real little sheep, but Hongyu's assistant, the guardian of the phantom golden sheep area, the cute girl nicknamed Little Sheep. "Run over here. I'll give you 30 seconds. If you don't come over by then, you'll finish." Hongyu threatened fiercely. Helpless, the poor little sheep could only use all of her strength to run to Hongyu's side in 30 seconds. Panting, she said, "Boss, I really have to give it to you. How did you find me?" However, Hongyu was not interested in answering Little Sheep's question. Instead, she grabbed Little Sheep's dimensional pocket and asked anxiously, "Hovercraft. Do you have a hovercraft in your dimensional pocket?" "Hovercraft? I don't have that thing." Little Sheep's words immediately plunged Hongyu into despair. Who still plays with hovercraft these days? Hovercraft are the most popular. Little Sheep took out a maglev motorcycle from the dimensional pocket like it was a treasure, ready to show it off to Hongyu. "F***ck, I'll deal with you later." Before Little Sheep could say anything, Hongyu pulled her away from the maglev motorcycle and pushed her directly into Guhan's arms. Her two long legs stepped on the maglev motorcycle, and the engine roared. In less than 10 seconds, she disappeared from Guhan's sight. "Damn it. What is boss doing? You didn't even say a word to me before you snatched my precious motorcycle away and even pushed me to such a disgusting man." Perhaps it was because he was shirtless. Ji Han was very disgusting in Little Sheep's eyes. "Your boss has his own things to do. This is a matter of saving the entire human race." Guhan smiled. "What's your real name?" "Why? Why do I have to tell you my name?" Little Sheep said cautiously. "Then I'll call you Little Sheep like your boss." Guhan's expression was indifferent. Little Sheep thought about it seriously for a while. Perhaps it was even more disgusting to be called Little Sheep by such a disgusting man, so she honestly said her name. "My name is Xiao Mion." No wonder people called her Little Sheep. If she added the word young to her name, wouldn't it make her Little Sheep? "Very well, Comrade Xiao Mion, I want to ask you a question," Guhan said. "What question?" Xiao Mion asked subconsciously. "Do you still have your big Ju Tian Star Time banner?" Guhan peeked at Xiao Mion's head. "Of course it's still here. Why? You're just a newbie sword wielder. Do you want to be the guardian of a main star?" Xiao Mion pouted in annoyance. "It took me 2 years of hard work to upgrade my main star, the Great Heavenly Star Banner. You're useless. No matter how I look at it, it'll take you 3 years to upgrade it. Don't even think about reaching the heavens in 1 step. You're already eyeing the main star, Ju Tian Star Time Banner." According to the rules of Shanghai Pass, newbies had to fuse with the guest star, Ju Tian Star Time Banner after entering Shanghai Pass. Only by continuously making contributions and proving their strength could they be promoted step by step to the main star, then the Emperor Star, and finally, the big Ju Tian Star Time Banner, which was at the level of the sun and the moon. It was similar to the promotion of officialdom in real life. However, it was different from officialdom. Officialdom's position might only change after a few years or even more than a decade. On the other hand, the position in the Ju Tian Star battle formation might change every few weeks. This was because your boss in Shanghai Pass changed very quickly. Maybe your boss died, maybe your boss's boss died, or maybe your boss left Shanghai Pass after 3 years. In short, it wouldn't be long before there would be an empty spot above your head. Then, it would be time for you to climb up. As long as you had enough contributions and strength, some people could become the guardian of an Emperor Star in 1 or 2 months. For example, it only took Liuonian Zheng a month and a week to become the guardian of an Emperor Star. Another example was Liuonian Ling. She pulled out the big Ju Tian Star Time banner from the Suzaku Imperial Star and inserted it into her head. According to Liuonian Ling's contribution in saving the entire Suzaku Imperial Star battlefield, and in the future, she might even save the entire Azure Dragon battlefield. Once the battle was over, Fleeting Time's position as the guardian of the Emperor Star was secured. She had also officially surpassed her father, becoming the first sword wielder in history to become the Emperor Star's guardian on her first day in Shanghai Pass. No, I just feel that with my strength, I can directly become the guardian of a main star. Guhan smiled and then raised his head to look at the sky in the distance. There, a dark cloud was floating over. As the saying goes, black clouds press down on the city, and the city is about to be destroyed. The black cloud was already here, but where was the golden scale? Chapter 872. Among the Wu people, no senior magus could control the black smoke, but when senior magi from two different clans came together, the black smoke was inevitable. The two clans were, of course, the Zhurong tribe and the Gonggong tribe. The hatred between the two clans could be traced back to Mount Buzhou. The war between Zhurong and Gonggong shocked the world, broke Mount Buzhou, and forced Nuer to refine stones to mend the sky to save the world. It was also because of the battle at Mount Buzhou that the Magi lost two ancestral Magi. The demons of the heavenly courts saw the opportunity and took the opportunity to conquer the world. They activated the heavenly cycle star array and wanted to destroy the Magi in one fell swoop, conquer the world, and become the supreme ruler of the three realms. However, they didn't know that this was a conspiracy of some powerful figures. In the end, although the Wu people were all destroyed, most of the spirit beasts were killed as well. Tai Yi and Di Jun, the two powerful figures, died in the war. Since then, the three worlds had entered the era of human beings. Of course, these were all digressions. The key was the conflict between the Gonggong tribe and the Zhurong tribe. After the Wu people were reborn in this world, the conflict had never been solved. It was only suppressed by the Ju Tian Star Great Battle Formation. Every time the senior Magi from the two clans came together, it was the most troublesome time for the other Wu people. It would be strange if the senior Magi from the two clans didn't stop fighting. Things were just as Jiu Han had expected. The witch clan had used a beautiful plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain. Although all the Wu people on the battlefield had died, Xiong Liu and Fengbue still held on for a while. During this time, Fengbue and Xiong Liu passed all the information about the planet to the other senior Magi, telling them not to come to Suzaku to die. However, Fengbue and Xiong Liu were not so smart. When they saw that Liuyan Ling was powerful, they told the other Zhu Wu not to come to Suzaku. However, there were still some smart people among the Wu people. They keenly discovered Liuyan Ling's weakness. There was only one Liuyan Ling, but there were two core areas that needed to be guarded. As long as he strengthened the offensive on the Azure Dragon planet, Liuyan Ling would definitely have to go to the Azure Dragon Heart to support him. When the time comes to attack planet Suzaku, it will be a great success. In any case, you, Liuyan Ling, have to save either the Azure Dragon or the Suzaku. If you, Liuyan Ling, still insist on defending planet Suzaku, then just send the troops from planet Luna to planet Azure Dragon. Can you, Liuyan Ling, teleport? Since they needed to confirm if Liuyan Ling was still on planet Suzaku, they needed 2 scouts. If ordinary Wu people went there, they would be killed, and their speed would be slow. Only the most powerful senior Magi could possibly escape from Liuyan Ling's sword. Therefore, the Zhu Fen and Gonggong tribes' senior Magi were sent over. Rainmaster, you old man, you're so slow. So slow. So slow. Do you have the ability to go faster? Amidst the dark clouds, a naked young man with only a black cloth tied around his crotch was shouting wantonly. The neatly dressed old man beside him was not in a hurry. He just lightly replied, Xingtian, this is my fastest speed. If you can be faster than me, then you can go alone. I won't stop you. Rainmaster's words made Xingtian speechless. He could not increase his speed anymore. However, Xingtian was not stupid. If he rushed to the front rashly, Liuyan Ling could concentrate all her power and kill him in a second. Xingtian did not doubt that a sword holder who could kill Xiong Liu, Fengbue, and Jiufeng within a minute would not be able to kill him in a second. Although the chief-elect repeatedly assured him that the descendant of the bloodline must have consumed most of the sword element in her body after killing the 3 senior Magi and did not have the ability to kill him in a second, Xingtian still did not dare to take the risk. He could only drag Rainmaster, his old enemy, to go with him. Of course, there was a price to pay. Xingtian was annoyed by Rainmaster along the way. He took out his axe and chopped the old man to death. Thinking that this was the best chance for Wu people in hundreds of years, Xingtian could only resist this impulse and rushed all the way to planet Suzaku. It's just as the chief-elect predicted. The woman with the bloodline has already left planet Suzaku. When the throne of Suzaku could be seen clearly, Rainmaster's old eyes flashed with a golden light. He said with a rare excitement, "I can see it. I don't need an old man like you to talk nonsense." Xingtian snorted. Humans are really a bunch of idiots. They thought that everything would be fine after killing Xiong Liu and the others. There are 2 humans left on planet Suzaku, and one of them is unconscious on the ground. It seems that the Ju Tian star battle formation that has shackled our Wu people for hundreds of years will finally be in our hand. After saying that, Xingtian brandished his axe with a murderous aura. With a roar, he rushed down. He wanted to chop that damned vermilion bird throne into pieces with his axe. "Xingtian, you have to calm down. Be careful. It won't be too late to make a move after the 2 of us find out." The old Rain Master immediately reminded him. "Find out my ass. There's only that stinky brat left." Old Rain Master, I, Xingtian, will take this credit. When your Gong Gong escapes, you will owe me, Xingtian. Ha 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 ha. Xingtian laughed like crazy and charged down without looking back. "Idiot." Rain Master said with disdain, "If there was only one person, then that brat down there would have escaped long ago. Why would he wait for you here? I think there must be some powerful guy hiding nearby that wants to sneak attack us. I'll take a closer look." The guy hiding in the dark that Rainmaster was talking about didn't exist. There were indeed only 2 people left on planet Suzaku. One was Guhan, and the other was Xiao Mion, who was lying on the ground. When he saw the black cloud, Guhan knew that something was wrong. He had made a serious mistake in his estimation. The Wu people's great shaman had arrived within 5 minutes. According to Hong Yu, she would need at least 5 minutes to get back. Before that, he was the only one left who could fight against these great shamans. Without the sword essence, could the solid cold deal with a senior magus? The answer was, of course, no. Just like when he fought with Kwafu, if it wasn't for the fact that Jiyu Xuanwu had changed into Yuan Ku's real body and scared Kwafu away, Guhan would have died there. Therefore, there was only one way, and that was to find a way to regain the sword essence. He had to use Guhan's real power to teach these Wu people how to be human. Oh, no, how to be a shaman. If he wanted to regain the sword essence, there was only one way, and that was to carry out the flag ceremony. In a situation where there wasn't a second great Ju Tian star flag, Guhan could only learn from Lionian Ling's method and snatch a great Ju Tian star flag from someone else. This was why Guhan specifically asked Xiao Mion if she still had the great Ju Tian star flag. "Give me your great Ju Tian star flag," Guhan said directly to Xiao Mion. "No." Xiao Mion rejected him directly. Was this guy crazy? How could he ask her for such an important thing? "I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. 2 shamans from the Wu people are rushing here. If they break the vermilion bird throne, everything will be over. And your sword lady should have been broken in the previous battle, right? Right now, I'm the only one with a famous sword rank sword lady. Only I can face that shaman head-on and stall for time until Hong Yu comes back. If you don't give me your great Ju Tian star flag now, then the vermilion bird throne will be broken, the Ju Tian star battle formation will be destroyed, and Zhu Wu will be born. All the humans in Shanhai Pass will die in the hands of Zhu Wu. Then, all the humans in Yangjing City, Yuzhang City, and other cities will all die. You will be the direct cause of the extinction of humanity. If humanity is lucky enough to survive, then you will be the eternal sinner of humanity. You will be written in elementary school textbooks and be scolded by future generations for the rest of your life. This was probably the fastest Guhan had ever spoken in his life. His mouth was like a machine gun, and it only took him 7 seconds to spit out this long paragraph. What was even more valuable was that he enunciated every word very clearly, so Xiao Mion, who was beside him, could hear everything clearly. What? I don't want to be the eternal sinner. However, Xiao Mion didn't expect that this long paragraph would actually make her cry. As she cried, she raised her great Ju Tian star flag above her head. With a wah sound, it snapped off, and she handed it to Guhan. Then, she began to cry loudly. She cried as she ran, crying her heart out. Cunning woman. Guhan rolled his eyes at Xiao Mian. Then, he directly inserted the great Ju Tian star flag that belonged to Gui Jinyang into his purple palace. His body quickly entered a stiff state. After a few seconds, Xingtian descended from the sky. Just as he was about to smash the vermilion bird throne with his axe, he was attracted by Guhan, who was standing motionless in front of the vermilion bird throne. Ji Yuhan's current state was quite silly, and it amused Xingtian, who had not seen much of the world. Ha ha ha. Did you see that, Rainmaster? This stupid human was actually scared silly by the great Xingtian. Xingtian pinched Guhan's nose and said with a laugh. Xingtian, don't dawdle. Hurry up and destroy the vermilion bird throne. Then, we'll be done. Rainmaster urged from the sky. It's okay. It won't be too late for me to kill this brat first. Xingtian laughed heartily as he raised his giant axe, preparing to chop this funny human to death with one blow. Clang! A crisp sound of axe and axe colliding rang out. Xingtian's axe was blocked by a slender iron sword. I heard that before the apocalypse, there was a saying, villains die because they talk too much. I never understood what this saying meant, but now I finally understand. Guhan said calmly. The power of the stars in his body was like the surging waves of the sea, and this Xingtian was his best sandbag. Chapter 873. The battle between Xingtian and Guhan began in an instant. To be honest, Xingtian had underestimated his enemy at first. He thought that with his strength, he would only need to waste some time and he would definitely be able to get rid of this damned human. However, Xingtian soon realized that he was wrong, and very wrong. First of all, in terms of martial arts, this human's swordsmanship was actually on par with Xingtian's. This was something that Xingtian had never thought of. Who was Xingtian? He was known as the #1 great sorcerer of the Wu people. As the saying went, Xingtian's ferocious will always be there. This was the legend of Xingtian's awe-inspiring might. It was said that after the 12 Zhu Wu died one after another, the remaining Wu people were led by a few remaining great sorcerers to the south of the world. They mixed with the humans who lived there and finally formed a tribe that ruled the whole south of the world, the Zhou tribe. Later on, the story that everyone knew was that the Zhou tribe, under the leadership of the mixed-blood Wu people and human Kaiyu, attacked Emperor Yang and Emperor Huang. They wanted to recreate the history of the Wu people ruling the whole world. However, they never expected that some of the Wu people would help Emperor Yang and Emperor Huang. After a great battle, the Zhou tribe was completely destroyed. Kaiyu was also divided into 5 parts and suppressed in different parts of the world. Meanwhile, Qiu's master, Xingtian, escaped and led the remaining Zhou tribe to the south to lick their wounds. Later on, Emperor Huang defeated Emperor Yang and became one of the 3 emperors. He occupied the heavenly court and ordered Xingtian to submit to him and pay tribute. Naturally, Xingtian refused to accept this. Therefore, he took a giant axe and a giant shield and went to the heavenly court. He broke through the defense of the heavenly soldiers and generals and went straight to the door of Emperor Huang's palace. He almost killed Emperor Huang while he was sleeping. But in the end, the Yellow Emperor was still a man of great fortune. He woke up at the critical moment of life and death, and then used the Shenyuan sword to fight against Xingtian. The two of them fought all the way from the heavenly court to Mount Shouyang. In the end, the Yellow Emperor was ahead and cut off Xingtian's head with the Shenyuan sword. He even chopped down Mount Shouyang and buried Xingtian's head with the rocks of Mount Shouyang. However, Xingtian did not give up. Instead, he used his breasts as his eyes and his belly button as his mouth to fight the Yellow Emperor bravely and tenaciously. Unfortunately, after losing his head, Xingtian's fighting ability was far inferior to the Yellow Emperor's. He died at the hands of the Yellow Emperor. Therefore, later generations concluded that Xingtian was the most powerful Wu people after Zhu Wu. After all, the Yellow Emperor was a real desolate-level Yuan Ku, and his sword, the Shenyuan sword, was a real emperor-level swordmistress. However, for some reason, Xingtian's power level in this world remained at the level of the fell-level Yuan Ku. He could not be compared to the Yellow Emperor at all. There were 4 small realms and 2 big realms between the two. But among all the Wu people, Xingtian was the real #1 great wizard. His axe skills, in particular, were definitely the best in the world. Xingtian was the ancestor of all axe users in the world. His axe technique had reached the acme of perfection, reaching an unfathomable level. In terms of sword skills, he could be ranked as one of the top 10 sword masters since the mythological era. If there was one Wu people in Shanhai Pass that could compare to the Liuyan family, it would be Xingtian. With his unpredictable axe skills, he had fought the Liuyan family's successor to a draw many times. He had forced the Liuyan family's successor to use a move like the billion sword technique to defeat Xingtian. Because of Xingtian's existence, when he stood outside the Sun Moonstar's defense line alone, more than half of the swordbearers under the Sun Moonstar's command did not dare to leave their defense line to support the Sunstar. They were afraid that once the defense line weakened, Xingtian would kill his way through the entire Sun Moonstar's defense line. The Sunstar had not been broken, but the Sunstar had been destroyed first. Only when the intelligence personnel discovered that Xingtian had left the Sun Moonstar's defense line did the Sun Moonstar heave a sigh of relief. It was a pity that while Xingtian was strong, his brain was not very good. He often fell into the humans' traps and was beaten to death by them. Moreover, after Xingtian had been revived in this world, he seemed to have lost his ancient memories. While his brain was not very good, he had a childish personality. Otherwise, he would not have argued with the Rain Master so childishly. All in all, Xingtian was a very powerful senior magus, but had a very childish and ridiculous character. At this moment, Guhan had a deep understanding of these two characteristics of Xingtian. To be honest, was Guhan's sword skills strong? Yes. Very strong. However, could Guhan be ranked in the top 10 sword masters since the mythological era? Of course not. Apart from those unknown swordsmen who did not exist in the mythological era, the number of people who could defeat Guhan with sword skills since the mythological era was probably more than 3 digits. If Guhan's chaos sword technique could be perfected, then Guhan might be ranked in the top 10. However, the current Guhan definitely could not reach that position. Therefore, one could easily conclude that Xingtian's axe skills were better than Guhan's sword skills. That was the truth. After exchanging a dozen blows with Xingtian, Guhan had fallen into a very passive situation. Although the great wizard in front of him was careless and childish, the axe in his hand was rough and delicate. His opponent seemed to be able to see through all of Guhan's moves, and every attack was blocked by Xingtian. This made Guhan want to vomit blood. Ever since Guhan started fighting, other than the mysterious swordsman from the Liuyan clan, Guhan had always been able to see through his opponent's moves and then use his sword skills to toy with his opponent. However, the person being toyed with was now Guhan. No matter what, Guhan could not break through Xingtian's terrifying axe. He could only be forced back step by step. In the end, he gave up on attacking and could only defend himself. Only then did he barely manage to maintain a stalemate. However, Guhan knew that there was no such thing as a flawless defense. Furthermore, Xingtian's axe skills were far better than his. In less than 100 moves, his defense would be broken through by Xingtian. What was worse was that there was still a great wizard Rain Master watching him from the sky. He could charge down at any time. Rain Master was a Wu people who specialized in long-range attacks. His water spells had a powerful support effect. If Rain Master used a slowing spell on Guhan, Guhan's attack speed would immediately slow down and he would not be able to keep up with Xingtian's axe attacks. In the end, he would be killed by Xingtian. On the other side, Xingtian was much happier. He was not happy because he was suppressing Guhan, but because he had finally met an opponent who could compete with him in pure swordsmanship. This was too difficult. In the few years after his rebirth, although he had fought many humans, those shameless humans did not dare to fight him one-on-one. However, those shameless humans did not dare to fight him one-on-one. They all used group tactics. Often, there would be dozens of famed sword-level sword ladies surrounding Xingtian. It was impossible to find an opponent who could fight Xingtian to such an extent. Xingtian, stop playing. Otherwise, the person with the bloodline will come back. I'll help you. We'll kill this human. At this time, Rain Master finally rushed over. The moment he saw Guhan, he cast dozens of negative spells on him. What slowing? Freeze. Numb. Bleed. Anyway, all sorts of negative statuses hung on Guhan's body. It caused Guhan's battle strength to drop by more than 2 times. You old thing. Don't disturb my battle. Seeing his opponent become so much weaker for no reason, Xingtian, who had just killed to his heart's content, became extremely dissatisfied. You're crazy. Master Zhu Wu's freedom is more important. When you get out of here, there are many powerful humans out there who will make you happy. Although Rainmaster said this, he guessed that there would probably not be a second human who could fight with Xingtian. Speaking of which, who was this human? His swordsmanship was so high. How come he had never seen him before? But it did not matter. He was about to die. With the cooperation of Rainmaster and Xingtian, this human could only die. And, before Rainmaster could react, he suddenly heard Xingtian let out an angry howl. Looking down, Rainmaster's eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. Xingtian's axe had broken. Yes, that's right. The axe in Xingtian's hand had broken. It had been cut in half. This axe made of carnate adamantine had actually been cut in half. Over the past hundreds of years, Xingtian had been beaten to death by humans dozens of times. However, that was because Xingtian's body had been killed. However, Xingtian's axe had never been broken. This was because no famed sword mistress had ever been able to cut Xingtian's axe. But now, this axe had been cut in half. What sword is that in your hand? How can it cut my axe? Xingtian looked at his broken axe and howled in pain. Because the Qingpin sword had an excellent restraining effect on the Wu people, even when fighting against a great wizard like Xingtian, Guhan still used the Qingpin sword. Xiao Mian was probably hiding somewhere and watching the battle, so he did not dare to use the Qi Dian sword. Otherwise, Guhan could try to use the Qi Dian sword to attack the opponent's dimensional node and see if he could activate the opponent's dimensional vortex in the Ju Tian star battle formation. Because the Wu people would not really die, the Wu people in the Ju Tian star battle formation would not activate their own dimensional vortex. Therefore, Guhan decided to use the Qingpin sword to fight his opponent. When Guhan realized that he might not be able to defeat Xingtian, he planned to use the Juzi sword and use his 9 swords of mysterious heaven to defeat this Wu people who could absolutely suppress his sword skills. However, Xingtian's axe actually broke. The Qingpin sword. Guhan replied calmly. The Qingpin sword. What Guhan did not expect was that when they heard the name of the Qingpin sword, both Xingtian and Yusha were so frightened that they took more than 10 steps back. This great wizard who could beat Guhan up with a single axe was actually forced to take more than 10 steps back just because of a name. Yusha, look over there. Suddenly, the panic-stricken Xingtian seemed to have discovered something. He pointed at the battlefield in the distance, which was littered with the corpses of the sorcerer tribe. It's her. It's definitely her. Yusha put his mouth next to Xingtian's ear and seemed to whisper something. Then, Yusha took Xingtian and flew away without hesitation. Guhan did not have the exaggerated sword light that Liuonian Ling had, so he could not catch up with the 2 great wizards at all. He could only watch them leave silently. At the same time, all the humans on the battlefield suddenly realized that the Wu people who had been attacking them with all their might had actually started to retreat collectively. In an instant, all of them had retreated, and not a single one was left. By the time Fleeting Time Ling and the rest arrived at the Green Dragon planet, all the sorcerer tribesmen had retreated. Long live! After a moment of daze, the sword-bearers collectively let out waves of cheers. No matter what, the humans had won this battle. Even though they had sacrificed the lives of nearly 5,000 human sword-bearers, they had still won in the end. The Wu people had retreated. Chapter 874. How was it? Did the Wu people come? After Xingtian and Yusha retreated for a while, Miss Hongyu finally came back with the roar of an engine. As soon as she came back, she questioned Guhan loudly. They came. Guhan nodded. But don't worry, I've already forced them back. You forced them back? Hongyu's face was full of suspicion. You? An ordinary person who can't even use sword essence. Boss. You're finally back, boss. Xiao Mian once again crawled out from the bushes she was hiding in and hugged Hong Yu's waist. Then, she cried to Hong Yu, "Boss, you have to help me. This person pulled out my great Ju Tian Star banner and stuck it on his head. Now, I'm the ordinary person, little sheep, boss." What the hell? Xiao Mian's words gave Hong Yu a headache. She pulled Xiao Mian away from her body. "Stand still. What are you saying in such a muddle-headed manner? If you didn't take the initiative to pull out your great Ju Tian Star banner, who would have pulled it out for you?" Although Hong Yu hated Guhan, she wasn't stupid. She could tell that Xiao Mian was spouting nonsense. What happened? Tell me everything in full detail. Don't lie to me, or else I'll make you a guest star guardian. It's him. Xiao Mian immediately pointed at Guhan with an aggrieved expression. He lied to me. He said that 2 Wu people's senior Magi were coming and that only his sword lady could resist them. He also said that if I didn't give him my great Ju Tian Star banner, Shanhai Pass would be destroyed, and humanity would perish. I would be the greatest sinner of humanity. I was so scared that I was muddle-headed and pulled out Gui Jinyang's great heavenly cycle star banner. Is that what happened? Hong Yu glared at Guhan and asked. That's basically it. Guhan nodded, but there is one thing I didn't lie to her about. These are indeed 2 great sorcerers of the Wu people. If I hadn't gotten the great Ju Tian Star's banner, the Suzaku throne would have been destroyed, and the Ju Tian Star's Big Dipper formation would have been destroyed too. Humph. Are you trying to tell me that you saved the entire human race? Hong Yu said disdainfully. Do you think I'm a fool? Even if it was Lady Lilith or Lady Alcade, they would only be able to maintain a stalemate between the 2 senior Magi. How could you, an ordinary sword wielder, defeat them? Xiao Mian, let me ask you. Did 2 senior Magi really come here just now? Were these 2 senior Magi really defeated by this man? Hong Yu turned and asked Xiao Mian. 2 Wu people did come, but they're definitely not senior Magi. They were able to break their weapons in just a few moves. I think they're at most intermediate Magi. This guy doesn't know how to brag. Bah. Xiao Mian really spat. If it weren't for Guhan's quick reflexes, Guhan would have been covered in spittle. Forget it. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. I'm too lazy to care. Seeing Xiao Mian's spittle, Guhan was really angry. If it weren't for his relationship with Hong Yu, Guhan wouldn't have bothered to say another word to them. After speaking, Guhan walked away. Stop. Where are you going? Hong Yu chased after Guhan and asked sternly. Since you're back, there shouldn't be any danger on Suzaku. I'm going to Green Dragon Planet to see if Ling needs my help. Guhan replied coldly. In the battle with Xingtian, Guhan didn't use his true strength, nor did he use a sword technique like 9 swords of mysterious heaven. Therefore, he was suppressed by Xingtian. From this point of view, Xingtian's side had the upper hand. Although Xingtian's axe was broken by Guhan in the end, they still had 2 senior Magi, and their strength wasn't damaged at all. Logically speaking, they should have continued to fight with Guhan. After all, at that time, only Guhan, an eyesore, would be left from their dream of hundreds of years. But Xingtian and Yusha had left. They had left without hesitation. Although Guhan didn't know why they left, one thing was certain, they wouldn't have any designs on Suzaku anymore. Coupled with the 2 annoying guys, Hong Yu and Xiao Mian, Guhan really didn't want to stay on Suzaku any longer. He decided to go to Green Dragon Planet to see if the Wu people had gathered all their forces on Green Dragon Planet and were going to risk their lives to attack. Hong Yu didn't know what Guhan was thinking. She only thought that because her trick was exposed, this disgusting man wanted to escape in a hurry. Therefore, Guhan's actions confirmed Hong Yu's guess. You can leave. But leave Xiao Mian's Ghost Golden Goat Great Ju Tian Star Time banner. That doesn't belong to you. Hong Yu said sternly. Don't worry, I'm not interested in this thing. However, I still need to borrow it for a while. I'll return it to you after the Wu people are defeated. Guhan said without turning his head. Scum. A cold light flashed in Hong Yu's eyes. The Hong Yu sword in her hand instantly moved forward and stabbed directly at Guhan's neck. Of course, Hong Yu deliberately moved the tip of the sword 2 inches away. This way, It would probably graze Guhan's neck and wouldn't really hurt Guhan. Hongyu just wanted to teach him a lesson. For a disgusting man like him, she needed to teach him a good lesson and let him understand how to be a human. However, when the tip of Hongyu's sword was about to pass through Guhan's neck, Hongyu suddenly felt something slap her hand. After a moment of dizziness, her wrist was tightly grabbed by another hand. Her arm was forcefully twisted into a U shape, and the blade of Hongyu's sword was already on her neck. Hongyu didn't understand what happened at all. Her sword was already on her neck. "Let me go. You pervert." Hongyu struggled, but she couldn't break free from Guhan's hand no matter what. "Your swordsmanship has regressed a lot from before. I suggest you practice your swordsmanship a little." Guhan's wrist exerted a little force, and he pushed Hongyu away. "I said I'm not interested in Gui Jinyang's great Ju Tian Star Time banner. I'll return it to you tonight." After saying that, Guhan dug into his dimensional pocket, and a droplet-shaped aircraft floated in the air. Then, without the roar of an engine, the droplet-shaped aircraft flew away and disappeared in the blink of an eye. "He actually said that my swordsmanship has regressed." Hongyu couldn't stop thinking about how Guhan subdued her. Just from that action, Hongyu knew that Guhan's ability was probably above hers. He wasn't just a man who wanted to suck up to the Lionian family. And Guhan's last words made Hongyu's imagination run wild. What did he mean by "my swordsmanship has regressed a lot"? Could it be that Guhan knew me from before? "Boss, are you okay?" Xiao Mian ran over in a panic. "Let me ask you. Are the Wu people who fought with this man really an intermediate wizard? Did you really see it clearly?" Hongyu questioned Xiao Mian again, but this time, the target of her questioning was Xiao Mian. "How could I see it clearly from 2 kilometers away? Anyway, the two of them came on a black cloud. One used an axe, and the other used rain," Xiao Mian muttered softly. "What?" Hongyu's expression turned anxious, and she hit Xiao Mian's head with her hand, making Xiao Mian cry. "It's all because of your mouth." When Guhan arrived at the Green Dragon planet, he learned from Lionian Ling that all the Wu people had retreated, including the Wu people outside the Taiyin planet. All of them had retreated and returned to their original tribes. This thrilling battle was finally over, and humans had won. Then, he had to do some boring things like cleaning up the battlefield. However, Guhan still had something he had to do, which was to take care of the sword bearers hiding near Taiyin County. Guhan had to take them to a safe place, in case the Wu people were in danger when they retreated. Guhan wanted to take Lionian Ling with him, but one of the highest leaders of Shanhai Pass, Lilith, the guardian of the sun, suddenly sent an order to Lionian Ling to go to the Eye of the Sunstar Array immediately. She said that there was something very important for Lionian Ling to do. Lionian Ling couldn't refuse, so she had to let Guhan go alone to meet the sword bearers. Although this made Guhan a little uncomfortable, Guhan still rode the water drop and went alone. Fortunately, he came back quickly. When Guhan arrived, he saw Jiyu Xian Wu and hundreds of Wu people confronting each other. Among them were dozens of Wu people at the Heaven Wizard level. Jiyu Xian Wu didn't seem to want to waste his precious dragon teeth on these Wu people, so it was very difficult for Jiyu Xian Wu. Several times, he was almost captured by the Wu people alive. Fortunately, Guhan came back in time. With a few waves of sword energy, more than half of the Wu people died. Then, Guhan started a massacre with the Qingpin sword. In just a few minutes, the hundreds of Wu people died under Guhan's sword. Their corpses were scattered everywhere. "Are you okay?" Guhan, who had killed all the Wu people, asked Jiyu Xian Wu. His tone was filled with concern. "I'm fine." Jiyu Xian Wu shook his head. "Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. None of your people died. They're all staying inside. You still need 3 days before you can turn back into a sword bearer. Why don't you stay in my dimensional pocket for the next 3 days? I'll let you out when I'm assigned to a garrison area." Guhan suggested. "No need." Jiyu Xian Wu shook his head. "I'm more familiar with this place than you are. I know where the safest place is. You just need to remember to tell me which garrison area you've been assigned to after the communication with your personal terminal is restored. I'll look for you myself." After saying that, Jiyu Xianwu jumped around in the lush forest like a spirit ranger. In a short while, he disappeared into the shadows of the trees. Sigh. There's still a bunch of troublesome fellows. Guhan shook his head and walked into the ruins where the sword-bearers were hiding. Chapter 875. Just like Jiyu Xuanwu had said, these sword-bearers were all very safe under Jiyu Xuanwu's meticulous protection. When they saw Guhan's return, especially when they heard that the Wu people's attack had been repelled, these sword-bearers immediately cried tears of joy. They all hugged each other emotionally, even those with lame legs were no exception. There was nothing much to say about what happened after that. Guhan led everyone back to the safe Vermilion Bird district. The Vermilion Bird region, which had been completely deserted, gradually became livelier and livelier. Some sword-bearers began to clean up the battlefield, rearranging the guardian seats and guardian mansions, and regaining control of the region that had been lost. This was something that had to be done. These guardian manors were an important part of the protection of the Vermilion Bird throne. The Wu people had to advance step by step and destroy these guardian manors and guardian manors before they could attack the Vermilion Bird throne, just like what they had done before. Although the Wu people had retreated, they would definitely attack again after all the Wu people that they had lost were resurrected. This was something that the Wu people had repeated for hundreds of years. On the other hand, the humans were also repeating the cycle of reclaiming various sectors, building guardian manors and appointing guardians to each guardian manor. When the tide was high, the beach would be submerged. When the tide was low, the beach would naturally be exposed. This was the cycle of Shanhai Pass. However, compared to the previous cycles, the work of recovering the sectors this time was more troublesome. This was because Shanhai Pass was seriously lacking in manpower. The Wu people had launched 2 large-scale attacks in a month. The first large-scale attack had cost them 3,000 sword-bearers. The second large-scale attack, which was also this time, had cost them close to 5,000 people. Fortunately, the first loss of 3,000 people had been made up. What they lacked now was the second wave of 5,000 sword-bearers. From this, we can estimate that there were around 9,000 sword-bearers left in Shanhai Pass. Don't think that this number is a lot. According to the statistics, among the 9,000 sword-bearers, 3,000 were heavily injured. The heavily injured I am referring to are not the physically injured. After all, Shanhai Pass does not lack medical resources. Even the most serious injuries can be healed by the medical pods. The heavily injured here referred to the sword maidens of the sword-bearers. Their sword maidens had all been broken during the battle, and they no longer had any ability to fight. However, 98% of these heavily injured sword-bearers were ancient sword wielder. This was because they only had one ancient sword wielder, and if it broke, it would be gone forever. Even if the famed sword-level sword wielder's famed sword-level sword maiden broke, at least they could still use treasured sword-level and ancient sword-level sword maidens. Of course, there were also those who fought very fiercely, just like Hongyu's Xiao Mian. Her 3 sword maidens had all been broken in battle. In the entire Shanhai Pass, the worst off was the Sun Star. Out of a total of 7,900 sword-bearers, less than 4,000 were left. Of these 4,000, 2,500 were heavily injured, and the remaining 1,500 were lightly injured. These were the sword-bearers whose swords had been broken. In this way, the defense of the Sun District became a huge problem. Putting aside the lightly injured, there were only 1,500 sword-bearers left on the Sun who could still fight. Of the 1,500 sword-bearers, not even 1/4 of the 7,900 sword-bearers were left. Other people played mahjong, but in the Shanhai Pass, one was missing 3. How could they play Bang Bang Hammer? Therefore, when Guhan returned to Suzaku with the sword-bearers, he received the latest news from Liuyan Ling. She requested all the famed sword-level sword-bearers in the Shanhai Pass to go to the Sunstar garrison for a meeting, including the sword-bearers who had come as reinforcements. Guhan didn't even have time to rest. He could only rush to the Sunstar garrison to attend this large-scale meeting that concerned the entire Shanhai Pass. The Shanhai Pass was divided into different sectors, also known as guard sectors. It was like a pyramid, and each sector was guarded by a powerful famed sword-level sword-bearers. According to the rules of the Shanghai Pass, the guards of each sector were not allowed to leave the sector they were guarding unless they applied for leave from their direct superior. They could only stay in their sector and ensure the safety of the entire sector. Since they had to stay in the sector for a long time, there had to be a stable place for them to stay. That was how the Guardian's Mansion came into existence. The Guardian's Mansion was literally the residence of the guards. In the beginning, the Guardian's Mansion was a traditional building made of reinforced concrete and dimensional alloy. However, as the various guard sectors were often taken down by the Wu people, the Guardian's Mansion would be razed to the ground by the Wu people. Therefore, the sword-bearers who were busy building every day soon realized that this was not a long-term solution. The Guardian's Mansion could not be a fixed concrete structure. Otherwise, the sword-bearers would have to spend the rest of their time rebuilding their own Guardian's Mansion besides fighting in the Shanghai Pass. At that time, the space-folding technology had been developed. This brand-new technology was immediately applied in the Shanghai Pass. The Guardian's Mansion was compressed into a small tent, just like the camping space tent that Guhan had used before. It looked like there was only a little space, but it was actually a room with 3 bedrooms and 2 living rooms. As the space-folding technology improved, the Guardian's Mansion became more and more advanced. In the end, it evolved into a Guardian sphere that was only the size of an apple. With a light tap on this small sphere, a majestic and ancient Guardian's Mansion would automatically appear on the flat ground. When the humans were preparing to retreat, they would also need to tap on the Guardian sphere, and the Guardian's Mansion would return to the Guardian sphere. It could then be used again after the Wu people were defeated. Therefore, the entire Shanghai Pass was basically a Guardian's Mansion that was stored in a Guardian sphere. However, there were exceptions. These 2 exceptions were the Sun and Moon Guardian's Mansions. This was because these 2 Guardian's Mansions were the formation eyes of the Ju Tian Star Battle Formation. If any of the formation eyes were breached, the Ju Tian Star Battle Formation would be breached. This also meant that the Sun and Moon Guardian's Mansions could not be breached. In fact, they had never been breached in hundreds of years. Therefore, the Sun and Moon Guardian's Mansions still used traditional reinforced concrete buildings. They were real buildings and not buildings hidden in the Guardian spheres. The Sun's Guardian's Mansion was very big. It covered an area about the size of 5 football fields. Guhan did not know the specific functions of the rooms inside. In any case, after Guhan entered the Guardian's Mansion, he was led through a long corridor by the maids in the Guardian's Mansion and entered the conference room of the Sunstar Garrison. These maids were probably the only ordinary humans in the Shanghai Pass. Because the Shanghai Pass was very dangerous, and there were no city walls or dimensional walls to protect it, ordinary humans were absolutely forbidden from appearing in the Shanghai Pass. This was a bloody experience. In the beginning, human sword-bearers were allowed to bring their family members or maids into the Shanghai Pass. After all, they had to live in the Shanghai Pass for 3 years. Regardless of whether they were men or women, they would definitely need to vent their desires. It was very humane to bring family members or maids along. However, after a few years, the sword-bearers sadly discovered that every time the Guardian sphere was breached, there was a 70 to 80% chance that the sword-bearers could survive. However, the ordinary humans in the Guardian sphere had less than a 30% chance. Many of the sword-bearers' loved ones had died in the Shanghai Pass, causing the atmosphere in the entire Shanghai Pass to be extremely bad. Therefore, the Shanghai Pass Management Committee decided that apart from the Sun and Moon Star, which could have a small number of ordinary humans were not allowed to exist in the other areas. Sword-bearers were also not allowed to bring ordinary humans into the Shanghai Pass. Therefore, the maid who was leading the way in front of Guhan was probably one of the few humans in the entire Shanghai Pass. This was a privilege that only the top sword-bearers in the Shanghai Pass could enjoy. Of course, when they encountered sword-bearers, they would still need to vent their desires. Therefore, humans still researched some more interesting things to provide to the sword-bearers. They would talk about this later. At the moment, Guhan was walking in a corridor called the Echo Corridor. The reason why this corridor was called the Echo Corridor was because there were many portraits of sword-bearers hanging on one side of the corridor. These were all portraits of the past guardians of the solar star. Gu Han did a quick count and found that there were more than 120 portraits hanging in this corridor. The Echo Corridor had used this unique method to record the 300 years of history of the Solar Star Guardian Mansion. When Gu Han stepped into the meeting room, it was already full. Almost all the seats were occupied by sword bearers. The maid had to move a dusty wooden chair from a small room in the meeting room and put Gu Han in a small corner. It seemed that many famous sword bearers had survived and could occupy the entire meeting room, but was that really the case? In fact, this meeting room was the meeting room of the Sunstar Garrison. It was originally designed for the 182 famous sword bearers of the Sun to have a meeting. Therefore, there were only about 200 chairs in the entire meeting room. But now, all 365 famed sword-level swordbearers from the Sun and Moonstar were squeezed into this conference room for a meeting, but the seats were barely filled. From this, it could be seen how tragic the sacrifice of the famed sword-level swordbearers was. More than 150 famed sword-level swordbearers had died, and there were less than 6,000 famed sword-level swordbearers in the entire human race. This meeting room was a traditional oval meeting room. The higher the status of the sword-bearers, the more central they sat. Sword-bearers like Gu Han, who had not contributed much, could only sit at the two corners of the oval. They were completely marginalized. When Gu Han sat down, the maid who led Gu Han in nodded at the two sword-bearers sitting in the middle. The door of the meeting room was closed. It seemed that Gu Han was the last person to arrive in the meeting room. Chapter 876. What was worth mentioning was that Gu Han also saw Andreevich and Harry Chang-ruo in the conference room. It seemed like they had already held a flag-planting ceremony. They seemed to have successfully arrived at the battlefield in the Star Shuttle. As for the remaining swordbearers led by Ashima and Ladia who were responsible for providing support to Planet Suzaku, they were nowhere to be seen. They were not in the conference room either. Could it be that they had not returned to the human settlement? Gu Han could not help but worry. There were more than 10 swordbearers at the famed sword level, and there were also the elites of the elites like Ashima and Ladia. Just the fact that the Saintess of Jerusalem had gone missing was enough to cause an uproar in Jerusalem. Everyone is here. Let's begin. A man and a woman were sitting in the middle of the conference table. Gu Han knew the man as well. He was the leader of the Yaoguang sword sect, Yaoguang. His name in Shanghai Pass was also Yaoguang. Therefore, there was no doubt that he was the leader of the Yaoguang sword sect in the game. Gu Han heard a total of 3 familiar names in Shanghai Pass. They were Hong Yu, Yaoguang, and the guardian of the Green Dragon Emperor Star, Miaobi. It seemed like the 3 friends of the Yaoguang sword sect were in Shanghai Pass. Gu Han could not help but let his imagination run wild. He recalled that the Yaoguang sword sect had become famous in the game 3 years ago. Could it be that the main force of the Yaoguang sword sect was actually the swordbearers in Shanghai Pass? This was not surprising. In order to maintain the boring activities of the swordbearers in Shanghai Pass, the Sword Committee had spent a lot of effort to complete the scientific research and transmit the network signal to Shanghai Pass through the quantum amplification device. However, because the Ju-Tian star formation was filled with the power of the stars, the quantum communication signal was very bad. They had to set up a set of relay equipment every few guarded areas, or else the network would not be able to run smoothly. That was why Gu Han could not contact the personal terminals of other people in the occupied areas because the quantum relay equipment was destroyed. After the various guarded areas were reclaimed, the network would return to normal, and Gu Han would be able to enter the game. Alright, back to business. Ever since the meeting began, Lilith, the guardian of the sun, had been talking non-stop. Yaoguang remained calm and listened to Lilith with a smile. He had no intention of interrupting her. After more than 10 minutes of narration, Lilith finished her speech, and the entire conference room was in an uproar. The swordbearers of the Sun Star and the Moon Star were arguing like a bunch of scoundrels, regardless of the fact that they were fellow swordsmen and the dignity of each other. As an outsider, Gu Han had no interest in participating in this quarrel. He was just silently thinking about what Lily had just said. There was only one reason why they were arguing like this, and that was how they were going to recover the areas that the sun had lost and how they were going to rebuild the sun's defense network. As mentioned in the previous chapter, there were only slightly more than 1,500 swordbearers left on the Sunstar who could fight. This small number of people could not even form a basic defense network on the Sunstar. The situation on the Moonstar was much better. There were nearly 5,000 swordbearers who could continue fighting. According to the news from Yangjing City, the Sword Spirit of Gui Hall was trying to build a support team of 6,000 swordbearers to support Shanhai Pass. However, the problem was that it would take at least a week for such a huge team to be built. Within this week, they would have to rely on the remaining forces in Shanhai Pass to restore the defense network of the two Sunstars. Therefore, Lilith made it very clear to Yaoguang that she wanted to borrow a batch of swordbearers from the Moonstar to fill in the gap of the Sunstar. This request was actually understandable. If the Sunstar was destroyed, the existence of the Moonstar would be meaningless. Therefore, the Guardians of the Moonstar, including Yaoguang, agreed to Lilith's request in principle. However, the problem was that Lilith was asking for an exorbitant price. She wanted to borrow 2,000 swordbearers from the Moonstar in one go. This number instantly caused an uproar among the Guardians of the Moonstar. The Sunstar originally had 1,500 people. With the addition of these 2,000 people, they would have a lineup of 3,500 people. However, in that case, the Moonstar would have less than 3,000 swordbearers left. They had fewer people than the Sunstar. No matter how they thought about it, this was unacceptable. Lilith spoke with conviction in response to the objections of the Moonstar's swordbearers. The reason why there are so many people left on the Moonstar is because the Sunstar withstood the attack of the Wu people's main force. The sacrifice of the Guardians of the Sunstar was exchanged for the survival of the Moonstar's Guardians. Therefore, the Moonstar should compensate the Sunstar. Moreover, if the Wu people made any strange moves in this week, the Wu people would definitely attack the area guarded by the Sunstar. Because the entire defense system of the Sunstar had been destroyed, the various defensive facilities were also gone. It would be very easy for the Wu people to attack. Therefore, from a safety point of view, it was necessary to strengthen the defense of the Sunstar. Hearing Lilith say this, the people of the Moonstar immediately expressed sarcastically that if their own people had not held back the most powerful great sorcerer, the Xingtian, the Sunstar would have been destroyed long ago. How could it have lasted until Lady Ling returned? Therefore, the credit of the Moonstar was actually the greatest. The people of the Sunstar immediately said that the people of the Moonstar were shameless. They said that the people of the Moonstar were simply dawdling. It was obvious that 2/3 of the Wu people that were used to besiege the Moonstar had retreated, but the people of the Moonstar did not even realize it. They were still foolishly confronting the Sunstar. They were simply the world's #1 idiot. If it was not for the Guardians of the Sunstar fighting to the death and being invincible, the entire Ju Tian-Star battle formation would have been destroyed long ago. When the people of the Moonstar heard this, they were immediately dissatisfied. They mocked the people of the Sunstar for lying. The fact that the solar system was able to defend itself was not the credit of the people of the solar system, but the credit of Lady Ling. When the people of the Sunstar heard this, they were immediately enraged. If they had not delayed long enough, even if Lady Ling had come, the eye of the Sunstar's formation would have been destroyed. Therefore, the people of the Moonstar immediately said that since Lady Ling's role was not important, they wanted Lady Ling alone. As long as Lady Ling's area was transferred to the Moonstar would immediately allocate 2,000 swordbearers to the Sunstar. F***CK. The people of the Sunstar immediately expressed their rejection. They said that Lady Ling was already their vermilion bird imperial star. For the next 3 years, she would be a member of the Sunstar. The people of the Moonstar could forget about it. Therefore, this dispute gradually evolved from a dispute over the number of people to a dispute over the ownership of Liuonian Ling. The swordbearers of the Sunstar and the Moonstar were arguing that they wanted Liuonian Ling to be in their own area. The reason was very simple. Liuonian Ling was too powerful. As long as such a great god was around, unless the Wu people gathered the power of more than 8 great Magi, they would not be able to defeat Liuonian Ling. However, the problem was that 3 great Magi had already died in the hands of Liuonian Ling, and 2 more great Magi had already died in the previous battle. Therefore, The Wu people now only had 7 great magi left. They could not even gather 8 great magi, and it was absolutely impossible for them to defeat the side with Liuonian Ling. Whoever had Liuonian Ling in their hands was equivalent to having a life-saving trump card. Therefore, Liuonian Ling naturally became the focus of the two sides. Seeing that this group of people was about to start fighting, Yao Guang, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. Lilith, how many sword-bearers do you have left? Yao Guang asked this question as soon as he opened his mouth. About. I think there are 48 people left. Lilith hesitated for a long time. In the end, Hong Yu, who was next to her, gave her the final answer. Before the war started, the Sun Star had a full field of 183 swordbearers. Now, there were only 48 of them left, and 125 of them had died on the battlefield. To maintain the basic defense network of the Sun Star, you need a total of 68 swordbearers. Am I right? Yao Guang asked again. Yes. Lilith replied in a drawl. Everyone in Shanhai Pass knew that maintaining the basic defense network of the Sun Star required 68 swordbearers. There was no need for him to confirm it. He was just pretending. How about this? First, I promise to provide you with 20 swordbearers from the Sun Star. That will make up the basic 68 swordbearers. What do you think? Yao Guang said in a deep voice. Are you kidding me? You want me to not even have a reserve team? If one of these 68 people dies, won't my whole army collapse? Lilith immediately retorted. I know. I will provide you with reserve swordbearers later. Now, I will confirm the minimum number of people from the Sun Star to support you. Is there any problem with that? Yao Guang said in a tone that did not allow for rejection. Forget it. I admit defeat. Lilith felt helpless. She could only confirm what she had just received. Does anyone think there's a problem with my suggestion? Yao Guang asked the other swordbearers present. No one answered. Clearly, they agreed with Yao Guang's suggestion. After all, this was the basic number of swordbearers needed to maintain the defense network of the Sun Star. This was something they had to do. How many ancient swordbearers do you have left? 1,492. You need at least 3,023 people to maintain the defense network. I will give you 1,600 ancient swordbearers. That will make up for that number. What do you think? Next, Yao Guang decided on the number of ancient swordbearers according to the famed swordbearers method. In fact, adding all of this up, Lunar Star had obtained a total of 1,620 swordbearers. Although it was still a little short of her requirement of 2,000 swordbearers, it was already a very good result. After all, Lilith knew that it was impossible for Sun Star to give her 2,000 swordbearers. Lilith had reached her bottom line by being able to maintain the defense network. Although the other famed swordbearers were not satisfied with this number, it was necessary. After all, the Sun Star had suffered too many casualties. They had no choice but to send so many people over. The number of people that Sun Star will send to you is decided. Next, let's discuss the distribution of the new reinforcement. At this point, Yao Guang looked at Guhan, Andreevich, and the others who were sitting at the end of the conference room. What's there to discuss? Lilith frowned. These people were originally arranged to support the front line of the Sun Star. Of course, they are all my people. Is there a need to distribute them? Of course there's a need to redistribute them. Yao Guang smiled elegantly. Her Highness Ming's list clearly states that these are reinforcements for the entire Shanhai Pass. These reinforcements have always been distributed by the Sun Star and Moon Star. Are you going to go back on your word, Lilith? Therefore, the focus of the conference shifted to the fight for Guhan and the others. Chapter 877. In just a few minutes, the fight over Liuonian Ling between the Sun Star and the Moon Star had reached a climax. In order to bring Liuonian Ling under their banner, almost all the famed swordbearers began to clamor. This made Guhan and the other new swordbearers feel incredulous. Although there were all sorts of fights and conflicts between the swordbearers outside of Shanhai Pass, as the rulers of the human world, the swordbearers had gradually developed some rules that were similar to the habits of nobles. Even if they were arguing, they would try their best to lower their voices and appear more cultured and elegant. Unlike now, these sword-bearers were about to step on the conference table and argue. The people of the Moonstar said that the Sunstar should give Liunian Ling to them since the Moonstar had already provided so many sword-bearers to the Sunstar to make up for their losses. However, the people of the Sunstar gritted their teeth and said that Liunian Ling had already become the guardian of the Vermilion Bird Imperial Star, so she was already one of their higher-ups. There was no way they would give her to the Moonstar. At most, they would give all the remaining sword-bearers who hadn't had their flag-planting ceremony to the Sunstar. In any case, Liunian Ling had to belong to the Sunstar. This argument went on for tens of minutes. As the core of this argument and the person being fought over, Liunian Ling could only sit awkwardly to the side and watch as these sword-bearers threw away their pride to fight over her, but it wasn't appropriate for Liunian Ling to say anything about this. If she didn't say something right, it might cause a conflict within the entire Shanhai Pass. Thus, Liunian Ling could only stay silent and wait for these people to come to a conclusion. Seeing that this important meeting was about to descend into an endless argument, Yaoguang and Lilith looked at each other and nodded tacitly. They slammed the table and roared, "All of you, shut up." Only then did he manage to suppress this endless quarrel. The sword-bearers of the Sunstar and the Moonstar looked at their two leaders in unison, waiting for them to come to a conclusion. Cough cough. Actually, I don't think our opinions are important. What matters is Miss Ling's opinion. Yaoguang's words were quickly approved by Lilith, who immediately replied, "That's right, I think we should let Miss Ling decide for herself." "Miss Ling, do you want to stay on our planet?" Lilith was too cunning. Under normal circumstances, she would have asked Liunian Ling which area she wanted to stay in. However, Lilith asked Liunian Ling if she wanted to stay on planet Suzaku. It sounded like the same question, but it was a choice between two. However, according to psychological research, due to various reasons such as human emotions, when humans answered yes or no questions, and there was no clear difference in benefits between the two, there was an 80% chance that humans would answer yes or no. It was like asking your children whether their father or mother was better. It would be very difficult for them to make a choice. But if you ask his father, would it be better? Then he would most likely answer yes. That was more or less what it meant. My position as the guardian of the Suzaku Imperial Star was snatched from Miss Hongyu. At that time, I had no choice but to do so in order to fight against the Wu people. Now that the Wu people have left, I should return this position to Miss Hongyu. Liunian Ling didn't wait for Lilith to reject her. She raised her great Ju Tian Star Time banner, pulled it out, and returned it to Hongyu. This made Hongyu feel very awkward. She didn't know whether she should take it or not. Although she really did want to return to the Vermilion Bird Imperial Star's great heavenly star banner, it wasn't because she coveted this position, but because she was already used to staying in the Vermilion Bird Garrison District. She simply didn't want to change places. Okay. Seeing this, the sword-bearers of the Lunar Star cheered together, while the sword-bearers of the Sun Star looked as if their mothers had died. In these people's eyes, since Liunian Ling took the initiative to pull out the great Ju Tian Star Time banner, it meant that Liunian Ling didn't want to stay in the Sun Star Garrison District. Therefore, Liunian Ling had to choose the Lunar Star. Even Lilith herself thought so, which was why her expression was so gloomy that it could drip water. Miss Ling, the guardian of the Imperial Star of the Lunar Star's Tian Sha Imperial Star, will be leaving Shanhai Pass in a month. I can make the decision to give him an early holiday and let him go home early. Today, you can become the guardian of the Imperial Star of Tian Sha Imperial Star, Yaoguang said with a smile. In order to make room for Liunian Ling, he didn't even hesitate to remove a sword-bearer in advance. However, this didn't anger the original guardian of the Imperial Star of Tian Sha Imperial Star. Instead, it made him very happy. He didn't want to stay a day longer in this damned place where he could die at any time. Being able to have an early holiday was like a pie falling from the sky. How could he have any objections? No. Unexpectedly, Liunian Ling shook her head and rejected Yaoguang's good intentions. She said with a slightly regretful expression, "My star shuttle fell in the Imperial Star Garrison District. Perhaps this is the will of the heavens, so I think it's better for me to stay in the Imperial Star Garrison District." Madam Lilith, is there anyone in the position of guardian of the Imperial Star Garrison District now? No one, definitely no one. Sigh, the unlucky old Wang died in the first wave of sneak attacks yesterday. Lilith didn't expect the plot to take such a turn. In the end, Liuyan Ling still ended up in her own Imperial Star Garrison District. Putting aside the fact that Laro Wang had already been sacrificed, even if Laro Wang had not been sacrificed, she, Lilith, would act like Yarrow Guang and simply give Laro Wang a long vacation or transfer him to another Emperor Star Garrison area. Even if she had to give up her position as the Sun Garrison, Lilith would be willing. Since this was Liuyan Ling's choice, no matter how unwilling the swordbearers of the Lunar Star were, they couldn't say anything more. They could only let Liuyan Ling officially join the ranks of Guardians of the Sun Star. Then, Lilith, since Miss Ling belongs to you, then the remaining 36 swordbearers who haven't gone through the flag planting ceremony will belong to the Lunar Star. What do you think? Yao Guang had no choice but to give up on Liuyan Ling and ask Lilith for the ownership of the remaining 36 swordbearers. The 36 swordbearers referred to the swordbearers that Guhan had brought back. Lilith had taken advantage of Liuyan Ling. Moreover, Andreevich and the other swordbearers who had arrived safely on the battlefield didn't leave. It was obvious that Yao Guang had tacitly agreed that they belonged to Lilith. According to Wonderful Pen, the guardian of the Green Dragon Star, Andreevich was extremely powerful. He had killed more than 500 Wu people by himself, and his combat ability was not weaker than that of Liuyan Ling when she didn't use the Billion Sword Scroll. He was definitely the most powerful swordbearer apart from Liuyan Ling. Andreevich alone could take on 20 swordbearers, so it was not a loss. Thinking of this, Lilith naturally couldn't compete with Yao Guang for the 36 swordbearers. Therefore, she nodded and tacitly agreed to this deal. Come. The 36 comrades, come sit beside me. We'll be brothers from now on, Yao Guang said warmly to the swordbearers near Guhan. Originally, these swordbearers were very dissatisfied with Yao Guang and Lilith because they had been traded here and there like goods. But seeing Yarrow Guang's kind, brotherly smile, the swordbearers didn't dare to say anything. Moreover, it seemed that the Lunar Star was more powerful, so it was obviously safer for them to join the Lunar Star. Therefore, these 36 swordbearers picked up their chairs and placed them behind Yao Guang, officially joining the Lunar Star's lineup. Only 3 people sat still. One was the bald Ku Rokin, the other was Leslie Dracula, and the last one was Guhan. P.S. I'm sorry to everyone. Ku Rokin should belong to Liuyan Ling's team. Therefore, when Guhan and Liuyan Ling were swordbearers, Ku Rokin should have been described a lot. However, because the author forgot about this, he didn't describe any details about Ku Rokin. I'm sorry to everyone. But don't worry, there's nothing missing in the plot. It's just that Ku Rokin's appearance is a little abrupt. Comrades, do you have any questions? Or are you dissatisfied with the Lunar Star? Yao Guang frowned, but his tone was still gentle. I'm not dissatisfied. I just owe him my life, so I'm following him now, Ku Rokin said, pointing at Guhan. I'm not dissatisfied either, but I think this guy is lucky. I should be quite lucky if I follow him. Leslie Dracula also pointed at Guhan. This surprised most of the swordbearers. Who was this ordinary-looking guy? How could he be followed by 2 famed swordbearers? Then, comrade, why don't you join the Lunar Star? Yao Guang could only ask Guhan. I still have this thing on my head. As Guhan spoke, a flagpole rose above his head. The swordbearers immediately recognized it as the Golden Goat Gui's great Ju Tian Star banner. The others looked at Xiao Mian, who was sitting next to Hong Yu, with a face full of anger. The Golden Goat Gui was clearly alive. Why would her great Ju Tian Star banner appear on this person's head? It's okay. Just remove this flag. I'll get you a new one, Yao Guang said gently. Sorry. This isn't up to you. Guhan shook his head and turned to look at Lilith. Miss Lilith, do you think I should remove this great Ju Tian Star banner? Lilith was stunned by Guhan's question. Who was this guy? She didn't know him at all. So, Lilith lowered her head and whispered to Hong Yu. Chapter 878. Hong Yu. Who the hell is he? Why is Xiao Mion's great Ju Tian star time banner on his head? Lilith asked Hong Yu. He seems to be a friend of Miss Ling. When Miss Ling left planet Suzaku for planet Azure Dragon, 2 Wu people attacked. At that time, only he and Xiao Mion were left in the entire Suzaku garrison. Because all of Xiao Mion's sword ladies were broken, he took Xiao Mion's great Ju Tian star time banner and killed the 2 Wu people by himself, Hong Yu answered honestly. Oh. In that case, he's a meritorious person. He took Xiao Mion's great Ju Tian star time banner to save the acquired star formation. Lilith nodded. Then, his crime of taking the great Ju Tian star time banner without permission can be forgiven. You just said that he killed the 2 Wu people. Does that mean that the 2 Wu people weren't killed? Yes, Xiao Mion said she saw with her own eyes that the 2 Wu people escaped in the end. This sword bearer couldn't catch up at all, but Hong Yu wanted to say that she suspected that the 2 Wu people might be the Wu people's great shaman, or even the great shaman Xingtian. However, before Hong Yu could speak, Lilith waved her hand and said, as a sword bearer of the famous sword rank, and with the great Ju Tian star time banner that can increase one's power by 3 times, he couldn't even kill the 2 heaven shaman Wu people and even let them escape. This kind of sword bearer can only be used in emergencies. He's useless. Give him to the people of Tai-Yin Star, lest they feel unhappy. Since you belong to the 36 people, you should belong to Tai-Yin Star. As for the Ghost Golden Goat's great Ju Tian star time banner, please take it off and return it to us. I heard from Hong Yu that you made a lot of contributions in the last battle. Later, I will ask Hong Yu to give you some sword scar crystals as a reward for your contribution. Therefore, after a few words, Lilith decided to give up on Guhan and give him to the people of the Lunar Star. If Lilith knew that the 2 Wu people who had been defeated were not heaven witches, but great witches Xingtian and Yusha, Lilith would probably be filled with regret. Since Lilith had made it clear that she didn't want Guhan, of course, Guhan couldn't shamelessly ask to stay on Tai-Yin Star. He just smiled bitterly, took the great Ju Tian star time banner off his head, and threw it back to Xiao Mion. Then, he moved his chair and sat behind Yao Guang. Ku Rokin and Leslie Dracula followed closely behind and moved with Guhan. Welcome, Comrade Guhan. Seeing Ji Yu Han sit down behind him, Yao Guang actually stood up and extended his hand to shake Ji Yu Han's hand. This was something that had never happened before. Previously, when the other 33 sword bearers sat down, they only smiled and did not even move their butts, let alone extend their hands to shake Ji Yu Han's hand. Thank you. The moment he shook hands with Yao Guang, Guhan suddenly felt Yao Guang pinch the web between his thumb and index finger. When he looked up, he saw a playful expression in Yao Guang's eyes. Could it be that Yao Guang has discovered his identity as the military governor? Guhan guessed instinctively. A careless person like Hong Yu might not be able to see the connection between the military governor and Guhan. But Yao Guang was different. Yao Guang's younger sister, Ming Yu, was one of the few players who knew Guhan's true identity. Yao Guang might be able to get some clues from his sister. Even if Ming Yu didn't reveal any information about Guhan, Guhan believed that Yao Guang was cunning and had been in contact with his identity as the military governor for so long. It wouldn't be difficult for him to recognize him in real life. With a supreme leader like Yao Guang, Guhan didn't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing. After distributing the new sword bearers under Guhan, the meeting began to discuss the issue of rewards after this battle. Shanghai Pass was a place where sword bearers risked their lives. Although there was a call for justice, money and material rewards were indispensable. Otherwise, who would risk their lives for you? Shanghai Pass could be said to be the place with the highest salary and rewards in the human world. Putting the rewards aside, even if the sword bearers didn't do anything in the past 3 years and didn't participate in a single battle, as a famed sword-level sword bearer, they would receive a salary of 100,000 renminbi and a basic salary of 1,000 hero coins every month. If the swordsman participated in many battles, then the rewards would be even more generous. These wages and rewards would not disappear even if the swordsman died in battle. If the swordsman died in battle, then the rewards would be transferred to the accounts of their family members, ensuring that their family members could live a comfortable and safe life in the base city. Their descendants would also want more subsidies, such as more opportunities to coordinate with the Sword Lady. Since this was a large-scale battle that affected the entire Shanhai Pass, almost every sword-bearer participated in the battle. Therefore, everyone received valuable rewards from this battle, especially the Guardians of the Sun. This was especially true for the Guardians of the Sun. Almost all of the survivors received 500,000 yuan and 50,000 hero coins as a reward, as well as various resources such as sword mark crystals used to make deep sword scars. Among everyone, the one who received the most reward was Liuonian Ling, the sword-bearer who fought the shortest time. Because she killed 3 great wizards and thousands of Wu people on her own, Lilith directly announced that she would give Liuonian Ling 130 million renminbi and 11 million hero coins, as well as a set of sword mark imprints for famed sword-level sword ladies. Gu Han, who was sitting behind Yaoguang, couldn't help but feel a little jealous. Gu Han wasn't jealous of the RMB. Gu Han had more than 70 billion in his account. Moreover, after winning the Great Yard meeting, Gu Han also won the final bet of the Great Yard meeting. It was estimated that he would earn at least 30 to 40 billion renminbi. This way, Gu Han's savings would exceed a shocking 100 billion renminbi. Even among the immortal sword-level sword-bearers, this was an extremely rich number. After all, Gu Han was one of the world's top 500 richest people. What Gu Han was jealous of was the 21 million hero coins. Hero coins and RMB were never exchanged. Even if Gu Han used the 100,000 won exchange rate, he wouldn't be able to exchange even 1 hero coin. In the sword-wielding shop that specialized in selling sword-wielding items, only hero coins could be used for transactions. Moreover, if Gu Han wanted to maintain his privileges as a sword-bearer, he would have to continuously pay taxes with hero coins. With Gu Han's current status as a famed swordsman, Gu Han had to pay at least 500 hero coins as tax every month. At that moment, Gu Han only had some hero coins left in his pocket, which he had earned from completing quests in my Ling Mountain range. After paying the taxes, he had less than 1,000 hero coins left in his pocket. It wasn't even enough to buy 2 famed sword ladies' deep sword scars up to the 7th grade. He was really poor. Speaking of the sword mark dust, one had to mention the awkward situation that Gu Han was currently facing. Although Gu Han was now a famed sword wielder, only Qingpin sword, Duyu sword, and Heavenly Sword had reached the 1st grade and activated their ultimate skills. Although this was already a very impressive feat, most of the sword-bearers' sword ladies could only reach the 3rd grade. The amount of sword scars needed to reach the 2nd grade and the 1st grade was enough to make these sword-bearers go bankrupt. However, Ji Han did not rely on his own strength to do this. Instead, he relied on the resources left behind by Yi Qing. It was Yi Qing who left Ji Han a complete set of sword scar imprints that allowed him to succeed. However, a few months later, Gu Han was already a famed sword wielder. He now had 3 more sword ladies than before: the past water sword, Qijian sword, and Juzi sword. The past water sword was easy to obtain. He only needed 1 set of sword scars, but the Qijian sword and Juzi sword were both famed sword ladies. Each of them needed 25 sets of sword scars to reach the 1st grade. Currently, a complete set of sword scars was worth around 450,000 hero coins to 500,000 hero coins. The reason why there was a change of 50,000 was because the production of the highest grade sword scars was always uncertain. When the production was low, the price would be higher, and vice versa, it would be cheaper. In short, the price would fluctuate between 450,000 and 500,000 hero coins. In the worst-case scenario, if Gu Han wanted all his sword ladies to reach the 1st grade, he would need 5 million hero coins. When he thought of this number, Gu Han began to regret having 2 sword ladies. 2 sword ladies were like a bottomless pit. If Gu Han honestly killed monsters to earn money, he might be able to save 5 million hero coins before he turned 50. It was truly worthy of celebration. The reward that Liuonian Ling received was 11 million hero coins and a complete set of sword scars required by a famed sword. This was equivalent to 5 million hero coins, which was equivalent to Gu Han's 30 years of hard work. How could Guhan not be jealous? However, when Liunian Ling received these rewards, her expression was as calm as an ancient well. She did not seem excited at all. This was normal. Not to mention a complete set of sword scars, the Liunian family could even take out a set of Gendi's sword scars without any pressure. Why would Liunian Ling be interested in these rewards? She might as well give her the Jian Su. The only thing that the Liunian family could not directly give to Liunian Ling was the Jian Su. After almost everyone received their rewards, it was finally time for Guhan and the other sword-bearers who came as reinforcements to receive their rewards. Putting Liunian Ling aside, the ones who received the highest rewards in Guhan's group were Andreevich and the other sword-bearers who fought with him on planet Azure Dragon. They all received millions of RMB and tens of thousands of hero coins. The one who received the highest reward was naturally Andreevich. He received 12 million renminbi and 220,000 hero coins. In comparison, the rewards for Guhan and the others were pitiful. They did not participate in the battle and only hid in the ruins, so their rewards were naturally not high. They only received 100,000 renminbi and 1,000 hero coins as a consolation prize. It was equivalent to receiving an extra month's salary. Guhan was no exception. However, at the end of the rewards, Lilith fulfilled her promise. Although Guhan had only defeated 2 not-so-powerful Wu people at the last moment, he had saved the entire Ju Tian Star battle formation from a certain point of view. Therefore, Lilith generously gave Guhan 1 million RMB and 10,000 hero coins as a reward. It's better than nothing. Guhan accepted the rewards calmly. 1 million RMB is enough for Qingpin to eat for 2 meals. 10,000 hero coins is enough for Chijian, Juzi, and Shishui to reach level 6 and activate their passive skills. It's somewhat useful. Chapter 879. Quiet. Everyone, be quiet. Receiving the reward was naturally a joyous event, so the entire conference room was filled with laughter. If someone entered the conference room at this moment, they would never have imagined that just a few minutes ago, the people in the conference room were arguing as if they had killed their parents. They almost started fighting. When the conference room finally quieted down, Lilith and Yarrow Guang put on serious expressions at the same time. Their voices were so gloomy that it seemed as if water could drip out of them. I have 2 very important things to discuss with everyone. Yao Guang looked around. Every swordsman who met Yao Guang's gaze felt a chill run down their spine. Finally, Yao Guang's gaze stopped on Liunian Ling. Miss Ling, please tell us what happened to you. Tell us why you couldn't make it to the battlefield as planned, and why the battle on the sun was so tragic. Hearing Yao Guang mention the battle on the sun, Lilith couldn't help but clench her fists. More than half of her 7,000 subordinates were gone. If Liunian Ling and the others had made it to the battlefield before 8 o'clock in the morning, at least 5,000 of her subordinates would have survived. The swordsmen with famous swords had suffered heavy casualties during the sneak attack, so there weren't enough famous swords to fend off the attacks of the Heaven and Grand Sorcerers of the Wu people. As a result, the ancient sword-level swordsmen lost their protection, resulting in a large number of casualties. If the 60 or so famous sword-level swordsmen had made it to the battlefield in time, the battle would not have been so tragic. The key to the problem was that Liunian Ling and the others were late. Lilith, Yao Guang, and the other higher-ups had already heard about what had happened from Andreevich and Liunian Ling. It was just that some of the other famous sword-level swordsmen didn't know about it. Therefore, Liunian Ling told them what had happened on her star shuttle. Yao Guang also asked Guhan to tell them about what had happened on his star shuttle, as well as how Guhan had met up with Liunian Ling's team. The last part was Andreevich's narration. The Romanov family, which was known for its wildness, actually had a meticulous successor. The moment the Romanov family boarded the star shuttle, he had noticed something wrong with the pilot. Taking advantage of the fact that the star force in the heavenly cycle star formation had not completely suppressed his sword element, he had killed the pilot and found out that the pilot had been controlled by the Shebi Corpse tribe. Unfortunately, because he couldn't contact the other star shuttles, Andreevich could only drive the star shuttle to his destination on the Azure Dragon planet. He couldn't contact the other 3 star shuttles. Things are already very clear. The sorcerer tribe killed the pilot we sent to pick them up and then took control of my star shuttle. They want to let these sword bearers kill them easily before the flag planting ceremony is held. Fortunately, Miss Ling and Guhan were among them. That's why our comrades could survive. Yao Guang concluded. There's no doubt that this is a very smart plan. If this plan had succeeded, our Ju Tian star battle formation would have been broken, and no one would be sitting here and having a meeting with me. Yao Guang paused. However, there's one thing I don't understand. How did Wu people know when our reinforcements would arrive? Only the higher-ups like us know about this. Those ancient sword bearers don't even know about this. How did Wu people know? I might be able to figure it out. One of the sword bearers suddenly stood up. His face was filled with grief and anger. It was Li Su. His sword lady's shield was broken, and it couldn't return to the sword. Just wait and see when it was broken by Wu people. Nan Li Su rushed out of the command area and into the battle area. He wanted to force his sword lady to return to the sword by touching the sword hilt. Li Su was very brave. He charged through countless obstacles from the shamans, and in the end, he successfully made his sword Maiden return to her sword and threw her back to the command center. But Li Su was caught by two shamans. They broke his legs and his arms, then dragged him to the back and disappeared. We thought that Li Su would be tortured to death, but now that I think about it, I vaguely saw the Shi by Corpse tribe's Grand Magus Chief-elect. She must have used a spell to control Li Su's brain and obtained information about Miss Ling and the others from his memory. Nan Li Su was the guardian of one of the main planets under the Sun Star, Ziwei Imperial Star. He was one of the higher-ups in Shanhai Pass, so he knew about the reinforcements. The Shi by Corpse tribe was good at manipulating people's memories and bodies. They could even extract human souls. Nan Li Su had sacrificed himself to save his sword lady, but he didn't expect that he would be captured by the Shi by Corpse tribe's Grand Magus Chief-elect. It was not hard to imagine how much the Chief-elect had tortured Nan Li Su in order to extract his memories in order to obtain the secrets in his mind. I didn't expect it to be because of Li Su. Lilith's eyes were filled with tears. I've always told him not to fall in love with his sword lady. Don't have feelings for his sword lady. His sword lady doesn't love him, but he. Lilith's sad words seemed to reveal a lot of interesting things. Of course, that was not the main point. The main point was that the source of the sorcerer tribe's information was clear. They had obtained information about fleeting Timeling and the others through Nan Li Su's memories. At least that was how it seemed. No, it's not enough to know this information. The most important thing for Wu people is to control the old drivers that we sent to pick up Miss Ling and the others. This is the most important point. Otherwise, Wu people's plan would not have succeeded. Yao Guang's voice was very penetrating. Lilith, those 4 drivers were all assigned by you, right? Yao Guang, what do you mean? Are you suspecting me? Lilith's voice began to sharpen. Of course I wouldn't suspect you. If something happened to you, you only needed to destroy the Sun Emperor. Wu people didn't have to go through so much trouble. Yao Guang's words eased Lilith's expression. No one would like to be suspected. I just want to know how Lilith chose the drivers, and who knows about them. More importantly, when did the Shebi Corpse Wu people take control of the drivers' bodies? Yao Guang's words gradually hit the key point of the problem. I didn't deliberately choose the drivers. When I was about to send the drivers to pick up Miss Ling, there were only these 4 people waiting in the driver's lounge of the Star Shuttle's control panel. I didn't even think about it before I sent them to pick her up. Lilith said while holding her forehead in distress. The number of drivers in the Sun Star and the Moon Star is fixed. According to the rules, there must be more than 10 drivers on standby in the driver's lounge at all times, waiting to help the retreating sword-bearers. But when Lilith went, there were only 4 people in there. Don't you think it's strange? Yao Guang said. I asked those 4 people, and they said that the other drivers had already been sent by Hong Yu and Magic Pen to pick up some of the sword-bearers who had retreated from the North Star, so there were only 4 of them left in the lounge. I didn't think too much about it. Apparently, she had already discovered that a large part of the reason for this was his own carelessness. Miss Hong Yu, Comrade Magic Pen, did you arrange for the drivers to pick them up? Yao Guang turned to the two of them and asked. Yes, yes. Hong Yu and Magic Pen nodded at the same time, but immediately shook their heads. But not this morning. I have already arranged for the drivers to pick them up at about 5:30 a.m. yesterday. At about 5:30 a.m., the retreating sword bearers had already been picked up, so there should be 10 people in the driver's lounge at 8 a.m. Lilith, please check the surveillance video of the driver's lounge. I want to see what happened to those drivers. Although Lilith was a little reluctant to be commanded by Yao Guang like this, in order to find out the truth of the matter, Lilith obediently played the video. The video started at 3 o'clock in the morning. There were 10 drivers sitting in the driver's lounge, playing with their personal terminals in boredom. At about 5 a.m., the terminal communication in the driver's lounge rang. After receiving the communication, 6 drivers immediately got up and left the driver's lounge, leaving only 4 drivers sitting in the lounge. The video paused here. Yao Guang immediately asked Guhan and others to identify whether the drivers who picked them up were these 4 drivers. But the result was unexpected. After careful confirmation by Guhan and Liuyan Ling, they told Yao Guang that the people who picked them up were not among these 4 drivers, but someone else. So the video continued to play. When it was 6 a.m., the door of the driver's lounge was pushed open again, and the drivers who had left before returned. But when they left, there were 6 people, and now there were only 4 people left. Then the 4 drivers who stayed in the room asked the 4 people who came back where the other 2 people went. The 4 drivers said very painfully that the other 2 people were killed by Wu people when the Star Shuttle landed. They could not come back. So the driver's lounge was suddenly filled with sadness. The remaining 8 drivers hugged each other to comfort each other. At this time, the terminal communication in the driver's lounge rang again. It seemed that the 4 drivers were going to go on a mission. Because the 4 people who came back before had already gone on a mission, the 4 drivers who had rested before should naturally go on a mission. It was a pity that the 4 drivers never came back after they went out. At 7:30 a.m., Lilith walked to the driver's lounge and began to issue the task of picking up Guhan and others to the 4 drivers waiting here. The video paused here again, but there was no need for Guhan and others to identify carefully, because Guhan immediately recognized the driver named Lu Yuanjie. He was among the 4 drivers waiting in the driver's lounge. After that, Liuyan Ling and Andreevich also confirmed that their drivers were among them. Basically, we can get to the bottom of it. I believe that before 3 o'clock, the 10 drivers in the driver's lounge were normal humans. However, during that mission, these drivers were ambushed by the Wu people and their brains were controlled by the Wu people of the Shebi zombie tribe. Then, they returned to the sun on the Star Shuttle. Because returning on the Star Shuttle can avoid the scanning of many Wu people's scanners outside the battlefield, these drivers controlled by the Wu people could not be found out. Yao Guang said. No, we have considered this situation before, so we also set up the Wu people's scanners at the exit of the console. These drivers have to go through these scanners when they leave the console to return to the driver's lounge. How did they manage to deceive everyone? There is only one possibility. Yao Guang closed his eyes. Although I don't want to admit it, I have to say this. We have a spy from the Wu people among us. He turned off the scanners at the console at the critical moment. Whoosh. Hearing this, all the sword bearers stood up at the same time. If these words did not come out of Yao Guang's mouth, they would never believe that there was a spy from the Wu people among the humans. Chapter 880. Almost everyone present could not accept Yao Guang's words. What did he mean by there was a traitor? How could there be a traitor among the sword bearers? Whether it was Yuan Ku or the Wu people, they only had 2 ways to deal with humans they caught. They could either lock them up as slaves or food, or kill them directly. In any case, humans who had fallen into the hands of Yuan Ku or the Wu people had never lived for more than a month. Therefore, even if it was an ordinary person, most of them would only wish for death after falling into the hands of Yuan Ku. They would never think of becoming a traitor. As for the sword-bearers, it was even more impossible because the sword-bearers and the sword ladies shared the same purple palace. At the same time, the sword ladies were extremely sensitive to the heart of the sword-bearers. Once the sword-bearers betrayed them, the sword ladies would immediately know about it. Then, they would risk their lives to stop their sword-bearers, or even perish together with their sword-bearers. All in all, ever since the Shanghai Pass, ever since the Great Calamity, there were no more than 10 human traitors on record. Among them, there were only 3 sword-bearers. As for the Shanghai Pass, there had never been such a thing. Although I don't want to believe this, the various circumstances have proven that there's a Wu people's man hidden among us. He was the one who helped the Wu people to ambush the Supreme and Purple Myrtle Star, causing the death of the Purple Myrtle Star's guardian. At the same time, he conspired to kill our old driver and helped the Shi Bai Corpse tribe to deceive everyone, Yao Guang said. That's not necessarily true. Gu Han could not help but shake his head because he suddenly thought of Sho Sho and Jiyu Xuanwu. Both of them were Yuan Ku, but they had also avoided the humans' flawless scanning equipment and lived like fish in water in Yangjing City. If Sho Sho hadn't taken the initiative to reveal her strength, others might have thought that she was just a sword maiden. Not to mention Jiyu Xuanwu, no one suspected his identity until now. If there was a third Wu people like Jiyu Xuanwu and Sho Sho, then all the problems could be explained. It was this Wu people who had snuck into the group of sword-bearers and done all this in secret. Yao Guang, there's no point in guessing. I'm going to pull up all the surveillance cameras in the control room. I want to see if he has the ability to hide from my surveillance cameras. Therefore, Lilith immediately began to frantically search through the videos, and soon locked onto several surveillance videos from the time when the 4 drivers came back. In the video, the 4 drivers got off the Star Shuttle and went straight through the scanner, but the scanner did not respond. If one looked closely at the video, they could see that the indicator light of the scanning device was off, which meant that the scanning device had been turned off. This proved that Yao Guang's guess was correct. Lilith's face turned cold. She began to check the surveillance cameras around the scanning device. Then, she found that 10 minutes before the 4 drivers returned, a sneaky figure approached the scanning device. At the same time, the power of the scanning device was turned off, and the entire scanning device stopped working. Who is this person? Everyone stared at the surveillance video, trying to see who the figure in the surveillance video was. However, this figure was clearly very vigilant. His body was bulging, and it was unknown how many clothes he wore. Even his head was specially covered with a dimensional alloy mask. The surveillance video couldn't see the person's face and body shape, so it was impossible to guess who this person was. However, Lilith was not willing to give up. She began to constantly check the surveillance cameras along the way the person walked, trying to find some clues. Unfortunately, this person entered the control panel dressed like this, and the surveillance cameras naturally couldn't monitor every corner of the room. So in the end, this person easily left the line of sight of the surveillance cameras, and no one knew who this person was. However, there was an unexpected discovery from these surveillance cameras, and that was the whereabouts of the 4 drivers who were deceived by the Shebi Corpse tribe. On the way to the flying platform, they were killed by the tightly wrapped person in an instant. Before their blood could even fall to the ground, their bodies were put into the dimensional pocket and completely disappeared without a trace. All the surveillance cameras stopped there, and there were no other clues after that. Lilith pinched her head with a headache, looked at Yao Guang, and then looked at the others. Whether there is a traitor or not, it seems that Wu people's people have already infiltrated among us. Everyone, try to think about it. Did you notice anyone acting strangely during the battle? If you did, speak up boldly. This is also for everyone's safety, and there is no need to worry about other things. Lilith actually wanted everyone to expose each other, which made everyone look at each other. Although on the surface, Lilith said it was for everyone's safety and worried about other things. But if they really began to expose each other, it would be fine if they were right, but if the exposed thing was later proven to be wrong, the friendship between the person who exposed and the person who was exposed would inevitably be over. Moreover, to these sword-bearers, everyone around them was their brothers and partners who fought to the death. If they made wild guesses and exposed just because of some groundless things, would they still be sword-bearers? Therefore, Lily waited for a full 5 minutes, and no one took the initiative to stand up and speak. The atmosphere became more and more awkward. In the end, Yao Guang smoothed things over, saying that this matter would be carried out in private in the future. The others could send him an email with their names hidden, and he would not reveal any information about the person who exposed them. Only then did they manage to get through this awkward topic. However, in the end, Yao Guang suddenly turned around to look at Guhan, and asked Guhan very seriously and sincerely, "Comrade Guhan, what do you think about this matter? Do you have any thoughts? You can speak up boldly." Yao Guang's action puzzled everyone. Of course, it was okay to ask others for their opinions, but why did he ask Guhan, the new sword-bearer's opinion? He had just joined Shanhai Pass, and he did not know anyone around him. What opinion could he have? What opinion could he have? At this time, the sword-bearers also realized that Yao Guang seemed to treat Guhan a little differently, and vaguely, there was a hint of respect. Yao Guang, the guardian of Taiyin Star, actually respected a newcomer like Guhan. Could it be that there was some kind of shady deal going on? This time, Guhan did not hide his strength, because he felt that it was not the time to do so. Then I will speak my opinion. It was a terrible thing to have a spy from the Wu people among the sword-bearers. They could survive this crisis, but they might not be so lucky in the next crisis. Therefore, for the sake of humanity, Guhan had to speak his opinion. First of all, I think that Nan Li Su's matter is just a cover. Regardless of whether Nan Li Su's memory has been read by the chief-elect or not, I'm afraid that everything related to us is already under the control of the sorcerer tribe. Ji Yuhan's words made everyone tremble. But why did Ji Yuhan say this? The reason is simple. The timing doesn't match. Guhan then explained, "I just checked the battle report. After Nan Li Su was captured by the Wu people, the Star Shuttle arrived at the Ziwei Imperial Star's garrison area a few minutes later. According to the inference just now, the 6 drivers were killed by the Wu people at this time, and then the Wu people of the Shebi Corpse tribe took control of their bodies." Guhan paused. In theory, it seems to make sense. The chief-elect learned about our reinforcements from Nan Li Su's memory, so he immediately sent the Wu people to kill the drivers and take control of their bodies. Everything seems reasonable. But in reality, this is impossible. The Star Shuttle landed in a relatively safe area, so it must be under the protection of the sword-bearers who were preparing to retreat. Normally, the Wu people would not be able to get close to the Star Shuttle and kill the drivers so quickly that the other sword-bearers would not be able to detect them. Therefore, only the great shaman of the Yanzi tribe, Fei Lian, could do this. Only he has the ability to hide from most of the sword maidens and kill the drivers at an extremely fast speed. At the same time, he also injected the seeds of the Wu people of the Shebi Corpse tribe. However, 15 minutes before the retreat, Fei Lian appeared on the battlefield of Suzaku. With the distance between Suzaku and Ziwei Star, unless Fei Lian flew at full speed, there was no way he could have arrived in just 15 minutes. This means that the sorcerer tribe knew about us at least 15 minutes before the Star Shuttle arrived. At that time, Comrade Nan Li Su was still in the command area and did not take any action. Guhan's explanation was very detailed, and the others all nodded in agreement. At the same time, they looked at Guhan with approval. They felt that this guy was very smart. But why did the Wu people pretend that it was Nan Li Su who leaked the information? One of the sword-bearers asked in confusion. Because the Wu people wanted to cover up something very important. The spy they placed among us must be a sword-bearer who knew about the information beforehand. I believe that not many sword-bearers would know about this at that time. This way, the two of you can greatly reduce the scope of suspicion. I have 16 people with me, Lilith sighed. Clearly, she was referring to the 16 sword-bearers on the Sun Star who knew about Ji Yuhan and the others. However, Lilith quickly added, only 6 of them are still alive. I have 1 less than you, 15 people in total. 12 of them are still alive. Including the 2 of us, there are a total of 20 people under suspicion. As soon as Yao Guang finished speaking, the people in the conference room began to whisper among themselves. Okay, let's put this matter aside for now. We'll talk about it when we have more evidence. Yao Guang stopped this topic. These 20 people were not ordinary sword-bearers, but the higher-ups of the sword-bearers. This included all the guardians of the Emperor Star and some of the powerful sword-bearers of the main star. If they became suspicious of these people and started to openly investigate them, these people might not have the mood to properly defend against the possible attack of the sorcerer tribe. Chapter 881. After ending the discussion about the traitor, there was only one last topic left, and that was the missing Ashima and Lady. They were the only ones among the 4 groups of swordbearers who hadn't returned to the garrison area. Of course, most of the swordbearers had their own judgment about their whereabouts. Obviously, not everyone was as lucky as Andreevich, Lionian Ling, and Guhan. Ashima and Lady's team must have fallen into the Wu people's trap and died in the hands of the Wu people. It was believed that after the garrison area was fully recovered, the bodies of Ashima and the others would be found, and their whereabouts would be determined. It was just that they didn't know how the Sword Committee would explain the problem of their Holy Maiden to Jerusalem base city. After all, it wasn't just the Holy Maiden. If the Holy Maiden was dead, then so be it. At worst, they could just choose another one. What was really important was the sword maidens in the hands of the Holy Maiden. That set of Allah swords was the lifeblood of Jerusalem. They were the most important sword maidens in Jerusalem. God knew what kind of crazy reaction Jerusalem would have after knowing this news. However, this wasn't something that the swordbearers in Shanhai Pass needed to worry about. If they had the ability, they could rush into Shanhai Pass. This was a forbidden area for swordbearers of spirit sword level and above. Even Jendi didn't dare to go deep into it. The next step was to go back to their respective homes. Yaoguang continued to discuss with Lilith in the conference room about allocating those swordbearers who originally belonged to Tai-Yin Star to Tai-Yin Star. They were busy until about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and everything was finally over. Then, the swordbearers of Tai-Yin Star took Guhan and the others back to the garrison area of Tai-Yin Star on the Star Shuttle. Of course, this time, the driver went through 3 scans. After confirming that there was absolutely no Wu people of the Shebi Corpse tribe in his body, the Star Shuttle finally took off. After more than 20 minutes of flight, Guhan and the others arrived at Tai-Yin Star Garrison from Sun Star Garrison. Inside the Star Shuttle, Leslie Dracula approached Guhan and asked Guhan about the situation of the solid black tortoise. Guhan, on the other hand, shook his head in regret. The Jiyu Xuanwu had disappeared in the battle, and no one knew if she was dead or alive. This made Leslie Dracula sigh endlessly. At the same time, he was also a little curious. In the Shanhai Pass Chen Tower, Guhan had fought with all the sword bearers in order to strengthen the black tortoise. It seemed like he really liked his younger sister. However, after his sister went missing, Guhan didn't seem to be too sad at all. It seemed that there must be some secret that he didn't know. By the time the Star Shuttle landed, it was already 5:30 in the afternoon. However, the entire Tai-Yin Star garrison area was not peaceful at this time. A large number of personnel were transferred, and the entire Star Shuttle's control panel was busy. At the same time, Guhan and the other new sword bearers also needed to be assigned to different garrison areas. They needed to officially hold the flag planting ceremony and become members of Shanhai Pass. Under the guidance of the other sword bearers, Guhan and the others entered a huge hall inside the Tai-Yin Star garrison. In the hall, there were 182 large Ju Tian Star banners and 7,400 small Ju Tian Star banners. It was equivalent to all the star banners of the Tai-Yin Star garrison being placed here. Some readers might find it strange. Weren't there still some Ju Tian Star banners inserted in the bodies of the sword bearers? Why were there all the Ju Tian Star banners here? Actually, the creation of the Heavenly Cycle Star banner was not difficult, and the materials used were not particularly precious. After all, the star banner needed to be inserted into someone else's purple palace. Some sword bearers didn't want to use the Ju Tian Star banners that had been used by others. Therefore, it was decided that during the rotation, all the new sword bearers could use the brand new Ju Tian Star banners. Of course, under special circumstances, there would also be people like Guhan and Lionian Ling, who would directly use the Ju Tian Star banners of other guardians. The whole flag planting ceremony didn't have any special steps, and the process was very simple. The sword bearers in charge of the ceremony would read the name of a person and the name of a star. Then, the sword-bearers whose name was read would walk to the side of the host, take the Ju Tian star banners from the others, and insert them into their own heads. The whole process was very fast, and it was carried out at the speed of 1 person per minute. Guhan noticed that almost all the sword-bearers were assigned to the Great Ju Tian star banners of the guest star, which were the lowest level of the Great Ju Tian star banners. Of course, this was very normal. After all, Guhan and the others were all newcomers, and they didn't have much credit. Naturally, they had to start from zero. Leslie Dracula was assigned to the Cirrus Tongue Star garrison area in Anjiji Township, which was under the Baihu Imperial Star. However, after the flag-planting ceremony, Leslie Dracula's face was obviously very unhappy. According to the customs of Shanghai Pass, after the sword-bearers completed the flag-planting ceremony and became the guardian of a certain garrison area, for convenience, others could directly use the name of the garrison area to call each other. For example, Hongyu could call him Master Hongyu or Master Vermilion Bird. Another example was Xiao Mion. She could call him Xiao Mion or Gui Jinyang. So obviously, Guhan could now call Leslie Dracula or Curly Tongue. This name was unacceptable to Curly Tongue. In Anjiji Township, there were a total of 9 garrison areas: Ang Star, Tian A Star, Moon Star, Tian Kai Star, Stone Star, Tian Yin Star, Chu Hao Star, Tian Yuan Star, and Cirrus Tongue Star. All the other garrison areas had good names, so why did Curly Tongue's name fall on her head? Just as Leslie Dracula was feeling very sad about this, the host finally called Guhan's name. Sword-bearer Guhan, subordinate of the Baihu Imperial Star, Water Ape Constellation Shit Garrison Area, the host read out meticulously. However, when he read out the word shit, even the usually serious host couldn't help but laugh. "Hey, I didn't hear wrong, right? You're shit," Leslie Dracula said in disbelief. "Was there a constellation with this name in this world?" "You didn't hear wrong." Guhan shook his head. Unlike Leslie Dracula, who didn't know much about constellations, Guhan had some understanding of all the constellations in Shanghai Pass. Of course, he knew that this garrison area called Shit was indeed one of the garrison areas of the Water Ape constellation. There were a total of 7 garrison areas under the Water Ape constellation: Orion Star, Vanquishing Star, Jade Well Star, Army Well Star, Screen Star, Toilet Star, and Shit Star. This was absolutely true. If you don't believe me, you can look it up in books. In myths and legends, the Water Ape was said to be an officer under the Baihu Imperial Star who was in charge of punishing people. The Orion Star referred to the 3 armies, the Vanquishing Star referred to the officer in charge of punishing people, the Jade Well Star referred to the wells made of jade, the Army Well Star referred to the underground wells used by the army, the Screen Star referred to the toilet screen, the Toilet Star referred to the toilet, and the Shit Star naturally referred to shit. The explanation was that the Water Ape was the officer in charge of punishing people in the 3 armies. He would punish the constellations that had committed a crime by going to the toilet used by the army and pouring the shit into the underground wells. Here, one couldn't help but admire the wisdom and imagination of the ancients. Perhaps even most modern Chidian authors wouldn't be able to connect the constellations in the sky with shit. In any case, as long as Guhan stuck the Ju Tian star banner on his head, Guhan would be associated with shit for the rest of his life. Even if Guhan was promoted to become the guardian of the lunar star in the future, the word shit would always be on Guhan's head. Even if no one dared to use this name to call Guhan, it would definitely become the best name to mock Guhan behind his back. If Guhan's fame was limited to Shanghai Pass, then it would be fine. However, if Guhan's fame grew outside of Shanghai Pass, then this nickname would definitely spread far and wide. In the future, even if Guhan became Jendi, people would still secretly point at Guhan's back and say, "This is the famous shit Jendi." However, even though he thought of these embarrassing things, Guhan's expression still didn't change. He calmly stuck the Ju Tian star banner into his purple palace and finally returned to his seat. "Comrade Shit, hello." As soon as Guhan sat down, Leslie Dracula, who was next to him, couldn't help but take the initiative to approach him and use this brand new term to tease Guhan. Leslie Dracula especially wanted to see Guhan's angry and helpless face. Unfortunately, her wish didn't come true. Guhan's expression didn't change at all. He just faintly responded to Leslie Dracula, Comrade Curly Tongue, hello. After Guhan, it was Ku Rokin's turn. In the end, the unlucky Ku Rokin actually received the Toilet Star's Great Ju-Tien Star banner and naturally formed a toilet duo with Guhan. However, compared to Guhan's outstanding self-restraint, Ku Rokin's expression wasn't so calm. Looking at his tightly clenched fist, Guhan had no doubt that Ku Rokin would definitely get the chance to beat up the host who was in charge of the distribution. When everyone's flag-planting ceremony ended, they were led by the other sword-bearers to receive their supplies in Shanghai Pass. Then, they boarded the Star Shuttle and went to their newly assigned garrison area. Boss, according to your instructions, everything has been distributed. After everyone left, the host suddenly walked into the back hall. Yao Guang was waiting there with a smile on his face. Let me ask you, how did the sword-bearer who received the shit star react? Yao Guang asked with a smile. His reaction is a little strange. The host frowned. This is the first time I've seen a guy who was assigned to the shit star but didn't get angry. He's still calm and collected. This guy is really not simple, huh? Go. There's nothing for you here. Yao Guang didn't say much and directly let the host go. It's really you. Military governor. Yao Guang's lips curled into a strange smile. Chapter 882. The area guarded by the Sh**T star was about the size of a county. The original Sh**T throne was located in the middle of a piece of flat land. However, this Sh**T throne had already been destroyed by the sorcerer tribe, so Ji Yuhan had to repair it. Fortunately, the repair process was not troublesome. Before Guhan left the Taiyin Star garrison, he had collected a set of supplies from the military supply office, including the star crystal needed to repair the throne. He only needed to place the star crystal on the broken throne and input his star power. Then, the throne would be able to repair itself with the power of the Ju-Tien Star battle formation. However, the process was relatively long. It would take 12 hours. The Sh**T star was the outermost area of the Baihu Imperial Star. On both sides of the Sh**T star garrison area were the Toilet Star garrison area and the Screen Star garrison area. However, because there were not enough people, there were no sword bearers in charge of guarding the Screen Star garrison area. Apart from the leader of the Ginseng Water Apes, only Ji Yuhan and Zhu Luren were responsible for guarding the famous sword-level sword-bearers in the entire Ginseng Water Ape area. The other original guards had either died on the battlefield or been transferred to the Sun Star. Moreover, there should have been 36 satellite guards under Guhan's command. In other words, 36 ancient sword-bearers with small Ju-Tien Star banners would cooperate with Guhan. It was a pity that the higher-ups said that there was a shortage of manpower, so they transferred all the guards who originally belonged to Ji Yuhan and Zhu Luren away. In other words, there were only Ji Yuhan and Zhu Luren left to guard the two large counties and the empty areas of the three surrounding counties. This undoubtedly put the two of them in great danger. If the Wu people gathered their forces to attack these areas, the other two sword-bearers would have no other way to survive other than to escape. However, if it was Guhan, unless the Wu people had more than 4 great Magi, Guhan would not be afraid of any enemies. However, for safety's sake, Ji Yuhan did not release his guardian's mansion when he was repairing the throne. Instead, he sat near the throne and meditated, just in case the sorcerer tribe came to attack him. However, the sorcerer tribe seemed to have completely behaved themselves. Until the throne was repaired, no one came to disturb Guhan. After the throne was repaired, Guhan, as the controller of the large star banner in this area, had complete control over the area. If any Wu people stepped into the area that Guhan was in charge of, the large Ju-Tien Star banner in Guhan's purple mansion would immediately alert Guhan, and Guhan would be awakened from his sleep. Of course, this control was not absolute. When facing some Wu people, the automatic alarm would not work, such as the great Magus Fei Lian, who had bypassed the area that was under the control of countless Imperial Star Protectors and killed the Imperial Star Protector of Ziwei. Fei Lian wouldn't come looking for me out of boredom, would he? Guhan yawned. Guhan had been in a state of concentration for more than a day, and he could not help but feel a little tired. He took out the space sphere that the Taiyin Star garrison had given him, and threw it onto the throne. A house the size of a villa wrapped around the throne, and this small villa became Guhan's first garrison residence in Shanhai Pass, the Shixing garrison. This was really worthy of celebration. After entering the garrison residence, Guhan first released all of his sword maidens, and gave each of them their own rooms. He then found his master bedroom and fell asleep. He slept until the next morning, when he woke up from the rubbing of silk. When he opened his eyes to take a look, it felt like the butt of a poor man wrapped in silk panties was rubbing against his face. An indescribable smell was swirling around Ji Yuhan's nose. This was indeed befitting of Ji Yuhan's new title. Could it be that the sorcerer tribe has really become obedient? Ji Yuhan stretched lazily and muttered to himself in disbelief. In fact, Guhan knew that the Wu people had most likely become obedient. If the sword-bearers had lost 60% of their combat power, then the Wu people had lost at least 70% of their combat power. Therefore, the Wu people's situation was not much better than the sword-bearers. The previous attack had failed, and the sword-bearers' line of defense had reorganized. It was impossible for the Wu people to break through the defense a second time. Since that was the case, there was no need for the sorcerer tribe to send their precious forces to attack the scattered guardian residences of the humans. Instead, they should consider how to hide their tribe so that they would not be found by the enraged human sword-bearers and start a massacre. Although the sorcerer tribe could resurrect their lost combat power in a few years, the sword-bearers could recover their combat power much faster than the sorcerer tribe. Next week, the sword spirit of the Gui Hall would arrive with a large group of reinforcements. At that time, the tables would turn and the sword-bearers would be the ones to cause trouble for the sorcerer tribe. After considering the matter of the wizard tribe, all that was left was the problem of poverty. Ji Yuhan picked up Qing Qiu, who was lying on the bed with her buttocks up, and then slapped her on both sides of her little buttocks, causing her to cry out in pain, but at least she woke up. "Asshole Guhan, why did you slap my butt? My butt will hurt," Qing Pin said in an aggrieved tone. "All right, Qing Pin, I have something important to ask you. I hope you can answer me truthfully." Ji Yuhan grabbed the lively poor girl in front of him like he was grabbing a kitten, and said while looking into her big eyes, "Ask away. As long as Guhan asks Qing Pin will tell him." It was rare for Qing Pin to say something that warmed Guhan's heart. "First of all, what's wrong with your body? Did you awaken some strange ability?" Guhan asked. "Huh? What did you say?" Qing Pin doesn't understand. Qing Pin, who had just said that she would tell Guhan everything, was now shamelessly pretending to be deaf and mute. "Qing Pin, don't think that I can't tell. Not only does your body's attack ignore the Wu people's defense, but it can also break the great shaman Xingtian's weapon. This is definitely not an ability that an ancient sword maiden should have. Qing Pin, can you tell me why?" Guhan really hoped that Qing Pin could tell him the answer to this question. Actually, back in the Miling mountain range, Guhan had already suspected that Qing Pin was not an ordinary ancient sword maiden. After all, that young girl Qing Pin's performance had left a deep impression on Guhan. Guhan had also asked Qing Pin this question a few times, but Qing Pin would always play dumb and dodge it. This time, Guhan felt that he had to get to the bottom of this. And that's not all that you're amazing. Under normal circumstances, after the Wu people die, they should turn into blood and flow into the soil, returning to the embrace of Zhu Wu's essence. But the Wu people who died in your hands will leave behind a corpse. I can also feel that when the Wu people die, something from their bodies will enter your body. So I'm guessing that your body has the ability to absorb the essence of the Wu people. That's why the Wu people's bodies can't turn into blood and return to the soil. Guhan decided not to beat around the bush with Qing Pin, and directly told him all the problems that he had discovered. And there's also the last battle with Xingtian. I suspect that Xingtian seems to know something. Although he mentioned the Qingpin sword, I have a feeling that he was not talking about the Qingpin sword, but another sword. Qingpin, tell me, why is that? Hearing Guhan's words, Qingpin obviously began to hesitate. There was a struggle in her eyes, as if she was struggling to tell Ji Yuhan the truth. Guhan, I really. Qingpin opened her mouth and was about to tell the truth. Then, her body began to twitch violently. Then, like an inflated balloon, she began to expand continuously, until she became a young girl in Guhan's arms. I didn't expect you to appear. Seeing the young girl Qingpin, Guhan couldn't help but smile bitterly. Originally, he just wanted to ask about the truth, but he didn't expect to force this ancestor to come out. I have no choice. That little girl is too stupid. She was actually able to get the truth out of you with just a few words. This is the only way I can make her shut up. This was the first time Guhan saw the young girl Qingpin in her normal state. It was also the first time Guhan carefully looked at the young girl Qingpin. Although the young girl Qingpin looked exactly like Qingpin, the young girl Qingpin and the cute Qingpin had a completely different temperament. One was a cute baby that could melt Guhan's heart, and the other was a cosmic princess who didn't care about anything in the world. Alright, I've always wanted to have a good talk with you. It's just that I don't know how to make you come out. Can you talk to me? Guhan asked sincerely. Let go of me first. The young girl Qingpin looked at Guhan's arms that were hugging her. I'm sorry. Guhan immediately loosened his arms and put the young girl Qingpin on the ground. I have no interest in talking to you, but if I don't explain some things clearly to you, I'm afraid that you will ruin my plan. So, I have to talk to you reluctantly. The young girl Qingpin kept talking about the me. No one knew who her me was. Before you talk to me, can I ask you a question? Guhan sighed. No. You just listen to what I tell you. You are not qualified to ask me anything. The young girl Qingpin curled her hair with her fingers. First, you are not allowed to ask that idiot anything about me. My body has already been mercifully given to you to use, so you should be grateful and use it. Don't think about useless things. Second, you have to kill all the Wu people here. Then, find 12 drops of Zhu Wu's blood essence and integrate them into my body. Do you understand? Third. In any case, you have to remember the first 2 conditions. I will tell you the third condition later. Cough cough, it seemed like the third condition of our young girl Qingpin was just to make up the numbers. I can agree to these 3 conditions, but you have to agree to one condition of mine. Guhan suddenly stood up and pressed his hands on the young girl Qingpin's shoulders. He said loudly, I don't care who you are. What do you want to do? But you have to leave Qingpin's body and return the real Qingpin to me. This is not a place you should stay. What a joke. Can't you see who is the real Qingpin? The young girl Qingpin suddenly sneered and spat out the word cut. Guhan's hands that were pressing the young girl Qingpin suddenly went numb. It was as if they were not his hands. The young girl Qingpin took a step back and broke free from Guhan's control. But I can promise you one thing. As long as you kill all the Wu people, I can at least let you be with the Qingpin you want in your lifetime. The young girl Qingpin's body began to shrink rapidly. It seemed like she was going to change back to the cute Qingpin. But remember, if you dare to ask any more questions, I don't mind cleaning the memory of this body. Chapter 883. Can I continue to be heartless? This was the first thing Qingpin asked Guhan after waking up. But this sentence revealed a hint of sorrow, causing Ji Yuhan's eyes to sting fiercely, and tears actually rolled down uncontrollably. Don't worry, Qingpin, even if I have to use up all my strength, I will let you live your heartless life. Guhan hugged Qingpin tightly in his arms. It was as if Qingpin would leave him if he let go. Perhaps it was because the appearance of the young girl Qingpin had drained a lot of Qingpin's energy, so Qingpin, who had just slept for a day, fell into a deep sleep in Guhan's arms again. 1 pauper to 8 paupers, who hadn't seen each other for a long time, also escaped from poverty's hair and flew back into Ji Yuhan's hair. Sleep. Guhan gently stroked Qingpin and then left the master bedroom. He began to inspect his new home, which was the Shising garrison. Although it was much smaller than the Sunstar garrison, Guhan's garrison residence was big enough compared to the other houses. After walking around, he found that there were more than 10 different bedrooms in the garrison residence. In addition, there were many small rooms on the 2nd floor of the garrison residence. Each room had 2 double-decker steel wire beds. These small rooms could sleep 40 people. It seemed that these small rooms were prepared for the ancient sword-bearers under Guhan. Although they had their own garrison residence, if the Sh*T planet was attacked by the Wu people, these ancient sword-bearers would all retreat to Guhan's garrison residence and cooperate with Guhan to defend. Therefore, Guhan's garrison residence had to be prepared for these ancient sword-bearers. Apart from a large number of bedrooms, there were also many recreational facilities in the Guardian's mansion, such as a swimming pool, a gym, and a game room. It could greatly satisfy the sword-bearer's basic pleasure in life without fighting. However, the most interesting thing in the Guardian's mansion was not these rooms, but a pair of maids who were affectionately called cute dolls by some of the sword-bearers. It was said that this pair of female servants had been designed according to the appearance of a pair of twin female servant sisters who had been popular all over the world before the Great Calamity. Their petite bodies and pretty faces were exactly the same, making it hard for people to distinguish their identities. Fortunately, one of their hair colors was pink and the other blue. The red one was the older sister, and the blue one was the younger sister. This pair of sisters weren't real human sisters, but rather cute dolls created by humans. Their functions were just like their name suggested, dolls that could be used for love. Their functions were similar to inflatable dolls from before the apocalypse, but their functions and authenticity far surpassed those of inflatable dolls. First of all, they had low intelligence and could carry out basic communication with humans. At the same time, they could make more than 160 kinds of movements and postures. When they weren't in use, they could serve tea, massage people's backs and legs, wash clothes, cook, clean, and do other things that maids were supposed to do. When they were in use, they could do many indescribably cute things according to the user's request. This was because, apart from the Taiyin garrison and the Sun Guard mansion, ordinary human female servants were not allowed to exist in the Shanhai Pass. Most of the sword ladies didn't want to have relations with their sword-bearers. Therefore, when the Shanhai Pass was first built, the sword-bearers could only use their fingers to relieve their stress. Fortunately, the Sword Committee headquarters understood this and specially ordered people to research and develop cute dolls. They were then given to every sword-bearer who joined the Shanhai Pass for free, becoming the best tool for them to relieve their loneliness. Moreover, these dolls could be placed in a dimensional space. As long as the sword-bearer didn't die, there was usually no risk of them being lost. If one wasn't satisfied with the appearance of the dolls, they could customize dolls with different appearances according to their own needs. If one was more interested, they could even buy 20 to 30 dolls at the same time to keep them happy. Rest assured, these dolls weren't expensive. They only cost a few 100,000 renminbi. They didn't even need hero coins. Master, please give us names. As soon as they saw the pair of cute dolls, the two dolls took the initiative to ask Guhan to give them a name. You'll be called Om and Diam, Guhan said casually. The original names of these two dolls had long been unverifiable. However, many scholars said with certainty that their names must have the word Mu in them, so Guhan casually gave them these two names. Of course, Guhan didn't have any special interest in Om and the Diam sisters. At this time, his group of sword ladies were sitting on the sofa in the living room, looking at Guhan strangely. Even if Guhan wanted to do something, he didn't have the face to do it. Did something happen to Qingpin? Seeing Guhan appear in front of her, Chijian's face was full of worry. As Guhan's sword ladies, although they couldn't perceive each other's specific thoughts. However, they could rely on a kind of connection between them to feel each other's emotional fluctuations. For example, before this, all the sword ladies sitting here felt that Qingpin's emotions had begun to fluctuate violently, as if she was in some kind of intense battle. Her emotions became very unstable, and the other sword ladies could feel as if their brains were about to explode. It's nothing. There was a small situation, and she is now asleep, Guhan said lightly. It was better not to let the other sword ladies know about the young girl Qingpin. Brother, you won't do anything strange to Qingpin, will you? She's still a child. If you have any desires, little sister, I can help you. Duyu threw herself into Guhan's arms and said some German words of orthopedics. Guhan ignored Duyu, his face expressionless as if she was farting. All right, can't you see it? Guhan doesn't care about us at all, and he doesn't really treat us as his sword ladies. It's as if that dead fish-like expression of his can fool us, Yi Tian said in a strange tone. Among all the sword ladies present, Yi Tian was probably the most experienced and mature one. Hence, she could see through Guhan's actual situation with just a glance. Master, did an enemy hurt Qingpin? Juzi always listens to your orders. Who do you want to kill? Juzi will help you kill them. Juzi was as loyal as ever. At this moment, the only one who didn't speak was Shishui. Although she was also sitting in the hall, she maintained her silence. She seemed a little out of place compared to the other sword ladies. This was to be expected. After all, Shishui was not a real sword lady to a certain extent. Her relationship with Guhan was not at the level where they could really talk to each other. Moreover, ever since she became Guhan's sword lady, she also refused to communicate more openly with Guhan to a certain extent. Hence, it was natural for her to keep a distance from Guhan. More importantly, she was just using Guhan's identity as a sword lady to get rid of her identity as Yuan Ku. Logically speaking, she should not have any interest in becoming Guhan's sword lady. Everyone, don't think too much. I will tell you the truth when the time is right. I think there shouldn't be too many battles in the next few days. Moreover, it's rare that no other sword bearers will appear here. Your numbers will not be exposed. Everyone can move around freely, Guhan said after taking a deep breath. Because he had to hide the fact that he had 6 sword ladies, only 3 sword ladies, Qingpin, Yi Tian, and Juzi, could come out and move around normally. Chidian looked exactly like Juzi, so he could sometimes fool others into showing up without anyone noticing. Duyu could also use her identity as Guhan's little sister in Yuzhang City. However, after arriving in Yangjing City, Guhan did not dare to let Duyu show up normally. She could only hide in her room or simply stay in her scabbard. This made the lively Duyu unable to bear it. Originally, Shanhai Pass did not have this much freedom. This was because there would be 48 ancient sword bearers around Guhan. There was a high chance that Duyu and Shishui would be exposed. Fortunately, those ancient sword bearers had not been assigned to this place. Ku Rokin was the only living person around. Without his superior's permission, Ku Rokin did not even have the right to leave this area. Chapter 884. It was said that the Shi**T* garrison district used to be a well-known heavy industrial base in Huaxia, with many well-known heavy machinery factories in Huaxia. Unfortunately, with the passage of time, these heavy machinery factories had long since disappeared. Only the rusted heavy machine tools that were exposed from time to time by the roadside told of the former glory of this place. Guhan took Juzi to walk around the entire Shi**T* garrison district. He mainly wanted to see the terrain of his garrison area, so that when the Wu people attacked, he would not even know where to set up his defense. After walking around, Guhan was very sad to find that the entire Shi**T* garrison district was a flat plain area. Except for a small hill in the northwest, there was no terrain that could be called a mountain, so the Wu people could attack his garrison area from any place. Fine. Anyway, I'm the only one in the entire garrison area so far. Even if there is a good terrain, I can only defend my own garrison office. Guhan smiled indifferently. Suddenly, he found that Juzi, who had been following behind him, had disappeared. Following the connection between himself and Juzi, Guhan quickly found the missing Juzi and found that she was squatting in front of him, attentively stroking a large machine tool in front of him. This is an industrial machine tool. Guhan found that the nameplate of this machine tool was still intact because the words on it were printed with a steel seal, so even after 1,000 years, it had not disappeared. It stubbornly penetrated its own information to the humans 1,000 years later. And this machine tool was actually an industrial machine tool of national importance. Figuratively speaking, the so-called industrial machine tool was a machine specially used to produce machine tools. For a machine tool, the most important thing was its accuracy. If the accuracy of the machine tool itself could not be controlled, then the accuracy of the products produced by the machine tool would inevitably be uncontrollable. Therefore, in the process of producing a high-precision machine tool, a qualified industrial machine tool was particularly important. In fact, in the current Yangjing city, there was such a super industrial machine tool. 90% of the high-end high-precision machine tool platforms in Yangjing city were manufactured by this industrial machine, and these high-precision machine tools produced various other machine tools with different functions, finally forming the entire industrial chain of Yangjing city. It was precisely because of a complete industrial chain that Yangjing city could manufacture all kinds of black technology products that humanity needed. Of course, for the current Guhan, the industrial chain was not important. But at some point in the future, Guhan would realize how much he needed this thing. Of course, this was all in the future. Do you like it? Standing behind Juzi, Guhan stroked the industrial machine and asked. I like it. Juzi's answer was very straightforward. Master, do you feel it? It is like a mother who has worked hard to give birth to many children, but now it can only lie here helplessly, so I want to save its life. Save it. Guhan was stunned. How are you going to save it? Master, can I bring it back to the Guardian's mansion? Juzi turned her head and looked at Guhan. I think I can fix it and restore it to its former glory. Fix it. Guhan shook his head in his heart. It seemed that Juzi's interest was aroused. She was originally the sword of the world's greatest scientist, Mo Di, and had a natural interest in technological inventions and manufacturing. Back when she was at the Liu siblings' house, she once fixed the game helmet that even Liu Yin couldn't fix, which showed Juzi's talent in this area. Perhaps it was seeing this industrial machine tool that aroused Juzi's interest, so she proposed to fix it. But so what if this industrial machine tool was fixed? This was just an industrial machine tool from 1,000 years ago. Now, it probably couldn't even compare to an ordinary machine tool. It was no longer worthy of the title of industrial machine tool. Even if it was fixed, it would probably be useless waste. But so what? If this was Juzi's interest, then there was no need to measure it with benefits. It was fine as long as Juzi was happy. Therefore, Guhan nodded happily and kept the industrial machine tool in his dimensional pocket. He planned to hand it over to Juzi when he returned to the Guardian's mansion. As for how Juzi tormented it, Guhan couldn't be bothered. Then, Guhan and Juzi fell silent again. Guhan was silent because he was worried about Qingpin's situation, while Juzi was silent because Guhan maintained his silence. Juzi, let me ask you. Suddenly, Guhan broke the silence. If someone put a knife to your neck and forced you to do something, what would you do? Hearing Guhan's question, Juzi seriously thought for a while and answered, Juzi is a sword mistress. That knife can't hurt Juzi. Guhan rolled his eyes. What if this knife can hurt you? For example, this knife was specially made to restrain you. Juzi listens to Master's orders. Juzi's tone remained unchanged. Whatever Master tells Juzi to do, Juzi will do. Tangerine only listens to her Master's orders, not a knife's. You usually look stupid. How did you become so smart at this time? Guhan smiled bitterly and touched Juzi's head. If you can listen to Master's orders, then whose orders should I listen to? I don't have my own master. Master really doesn't have your own master? Juzi looked at Guhan very seriously. If Master doesn't have your own master, then why does Master keep fighting? If Juzi doesn't have a master, then Juzi will lie quietly in the scabbard. Anything that happens outside will have nothing to do with Juzi. You are being irresponsible, just like a salted fish without a dream. Guhan knocked Juzi's head. So, Master, you are fighting for your own dream. Juzi's words suddenly became full of philosophy. Then Master only needs to listen to the orders of his dream. My dream. Guhan fell into deep thought. Once upon a time, Guhan's dream was very firm. It was to kill all the Yuan Ku, avenge his parents, and give all humans a peaceful world. Other than that, Guhan had no other dreams in his world. For this dream, Guhan was willing to sacrifice everything that could be sacrificed. But now, he seemed to be different. There were too many people around Guhan who would rather sacrifice himself than her, such as Qingpin, Chijian, Duyu, and the little Juzi beside him. Master, have you found the answer to the question? Seeing that Guhan stopped walking for a long time, Juzi asked confusedly. Not yet. Guhan shook his head. But I have a rough idea of where to ask for directions. Time passed day by day. Guhan stayed in Shising garrison for about 5 days. The surroundings were still quiet, and no Wu people came to disturb Guhan's beautiful life. However, even though the Wu people did not come to disturb Guhan, it did not mean that others would not come to disturb Guhan. For example, Jiyu Xuanwu, Guhan's daughter, suddenly appeared in the Shising garrison's area of defense. And the moment she appeared, the Sh*T*Star Ju Tian Star's Chen banner immediately alerted Guhan, telling Guhan that a non-human life form had appeared in his Sh*T Star's area of defense. You should come with me. This was the first sentence Jiyu Xuanwu said after seeing Guhan. It was also the main reason why Jiyu Xuanwu had always been by Guhan's side. In essence, she was just a pitiful girl who wanted to bring her heartless father to see her mother, who had endured all kinds of hardships. I'm afraid this is a bit difficult. Hearing Jiyu Xuanwu's request, Guhan honestly replied, you have also seen that there are only 3 sword bearers in the entire water ape garrison. If any one of them leaves, it will lead to the collapse of the entire garrison. I think before the new batch of reinforcements arrives, I will not be able to meet your mother with you for the time being. No. Jiyu Xuanwu shook her head without thinking. Actually, I secretly went back for a trip in the past 5 days. I found out that my mother was already at the end of her life. If we delay it for a few more days, I am really afraid. Speaking up to here, Jiyu Xuanwu's eyes suddenly turned red. Actually, Guhan had already noticed that from the moment she entered the door, Jiyu Xuanwu's eyes were already red and swollen, but now they had become even more swollen. This meant that in the past 2 days, Jiyu Xuanwu had shed a lot of tears. It seemed like her mother was really not going to make it. No, this time I am afraid that I will be gone for at least 1 or 2 days. I cannot selfishly put the entire garrison in danger just because of me. Although his heart ached for Jiyu Xuanwu, Guhan did not hesitate to reject Jiyu Xuanwu's request. Then I will kill you. Jiyu Xuanwu gritted his teeth. The devil bullet gun suddenly appeared in Jiyu Xuanwu's hands. Almost in an instant, the gun's muzzle was pressed against Guhan's head. Are you going or not? Jiyu Xuanwu screamed at the top of his lungs. Stop. What are you trying to do? The Juzi sword and Chijian sword beside Guhan instantly drew their swords and aimed at Jiyu Xuanwu, who was pressing against Guhan's head. The tense situation seemed to have reached the point where it could explode at any moment. Not going. How could Jiyu Han be threatened by a gun? The only words that came out of his mouth were I don't want to go. Jiyu Xuanwu's fingers tightly grasped the trigger. It was as if in the next moment, a dragon tooth bullet would shoot out from the muzzle and take away Guhan's life. But after a long stalemate, Jiyu Xuanwu still did not pull the trigger. She could only use the most helpless and pleading eyes in the world to look at Guhan. I beg you. Dad. I beg you to go see my mother. She is really going to die. Woo-woo. When Jiyu Xuanwu said this, the devil bullet gun in her hands fell to the ground. She could only kneel on the ground and cry like a helpless child. It must be admitted that at this moment, Guhan's heart softened. Just when Guhan was about to open his mouth to say something, the great Ju Tian Star Chen banner in his zifu suddenly issued a hurried warning sound, warning Guhan that some object had entered the Shit Star garrison at an extremely fast speed and was approaching Guhan's position. Hide in my dimensional pocket first. Guhan did not say anything and directly put Jiyu Xuanwu into his dimensional pocket. Because Jiyu Xuanwu was currently in Yuan Ku's form, there was no problem in living in the dimensional pocket. Then Guhan also put the 3 sword ladies back into their scabbards. He used the fastest speed to prepare for the arrival of this uninvited guest. Chapter 885. Comrade Guhan. You've taken good care of this place. As soon as the person entered the door, he spoke to Guhan in a very friendly manner. So, it's Sir Yaoguang. I wonder what brings Sir Yaoguang to my Shising garrison. Are you here to inspect the work? Guhan chuckled. Not only was there no respect in his tone, but there was also a hint of sarcasm in it. Originally, everyone was a famed sword-level swordsman, but because of the reason of first come, first served. That was why he, Yaoguang, could stand at the top of Shanhai Pass, while Guhan stayed in this garrison area that even his name could not compare to. Of course, Guhan was absolutely not dissatisfied with this garrison area. Absolutely not. It's not really an inspection. Anyway, with you, Guhan, guarding this place, I believe that no Wu people can pass through here. Yaoguang smiled slightly. That Lilith thinks that she has the most powerful swordsman, but she doesn't know that the real all-rounder is here with me. Did you come to me just to say this nonsense? Guhan knocked on the table. All right, Yaoguang, stop acting. I know you've seen through it. Some things can't be hidden from smart people. You and I don't need to play riddles. All right, I want to act a little longer. Yaoguang revealed a disappointed expression. Then, I'll officially welcome Comrade Military Governor to join our Sanshuian Shising garrison. I hope Comrade Military Governor won't take my little joke too seriously. Can I say that I take it very seriously? Guhan asked. Of course you can. Yaoguang nodded and then smiled. But if I can make Comrade Military Governor feel sorry for me, I'll feel very honored. You know that I'm not a person who likes to talk nonsense. You don't look like you're here to catch up with me. Your intuition is still so sharp. In fact, I do have something to talk to you about. Yaoguang nodded, then his smiling face suddenly turned serious. He projected a few photos from his personal terminal and placed them in front of Guhan. This is. Guhan immediately narrowed his eyes. According to this photo, in a dense forest, there was a very conspicuous white object hanging on a tree. This is a picture taken by a patrolling unmanned star shuttle. As Yaoguang spoke, the photo suddenly zoomed in with the white object as the center. When it was zoomed in, the white object finally revealed its true appearance. It turned out to be a white robe. This is Ashima's robe. Guhan had a deep impression of this robe because Ashima had been wearing this white robe in front of Guhan for the past few days. How could Guhan not recognize the owner of this robe? Good eyesight. Yaoguang gave Guhan a thumbs up and praised. This is a clue we got 3 hours ago. I spent a full half an hour comparing it to confirm that this robe is Ashima's Saintess's robe. I didn't expect Mr. Military Governor to recognize it at a glance. If I knew this earlier, I wouldn't have wasted this half an hour. Where was this photo taken? Did you search the surroundings carefully? Guhan asked immediately. This photo was taken in the depths of Changbai Mountain. That's Wu people's territory. Our people don't dare to enter that area at all, so we can only search with unmanned star shuttles. Unfortunately, 6 unmanned star shuttles searched for a full 2 hours and didn't find a second clue, Yaoguang said regretfully. That's not strange. Changbai Mountain is full of lush forests and snow. It's not easy to find this white robe. It's almost impossible to find more clues with the star shuttles in the air. Guhan continued, however, I'm very curious as to why they would appear in Changbai Mountain. If their star shuttles were controlled by Wu people, then Wu people would definitely kill them as soon as possible instead of taking them to a place as far away as Changbai Mountain. What do you think? Yaoguang's eyes lit up. In my opinion, Ashima and the rest weren't forced to Changbai Mountain by the Wu people. They must have seen through the Shi by Corpse tribe's disguise in the star shuttle, just like us. They might have engaged in a battle with the wizard tribe, and in the end, they completely destroyed the control system of the star shuttle. They could only let the star shuttle fly on its own, and in the end, they landed in Changbai Mountain. Ji Han quickly analyzed. That makes sense, but it's only your side of the story. Do you have any proof? Yaoguang's eyes lit up even more. I don't have the proof you're looking for, but I have a simple analysis with common sense. After Ji Han finished speaking, he used his personal terminal to project a map of the entire Shanhai Pass. He then pointed at the position of the Shanhai Pass Tower and said, "This is where we're heading out from." He then pointed at the Guardian's mansion on planet Suzaku and said, "This is where Ashima and the rest were supposed to arrive at. Connect these 2 points with a straight line, and then make an extension to the end." As soon as Guhan finished speaking, his finger stopped at a certain point in the area marked with Changbai Mountain on the map. There's a limit to the star shuttle's energy. When all the energy is used up, I believe their star shuttle will land near this point. You can make a comparison. I believe the image taken by the unmanned star shuttle should be around this point, Guhan concluded. Brilliant, brilliant. Yarrow Guang clapped her hands, and at the same time, she projected her own map. The two maps overlapped, and at the place where Ji Yuhan's finger had stopped, the picture of Yarrow Guang's accident was clearly visible. It seemed that Guhan's guess was right. The photo was indeed found at the location Guhan pointed out. We got in touch with the city of Jerusalem yesterday. The Archbishop of Jerusalem Base City told me very clearly that the headlamp representing the life of the Holy Maiden in the Vatican has not been extinguished, so they think that their Holy Maiden is 100% still alive. They want me to do my best to bring back their saintess and holy sword. Otherwise, Lunyang City will forever refuse to send any swordbearers into the Shanhai Pass. They won't care even if the heavenly cycle star formation is destroyed. There was a hint of anger in Yao Guang's words. He was obviously angry at Jerusalem's threatening attitude. However, Yao Guang could not ignore the threat of Jerusalem. After all, Jerusalem was responsible for 1/10 of the support of Shanhai Pass. If this 1/10 of the support was lost, it would have to be filled by other cities. At that time, it would be strange if the other 7 base cities did not jump up and bury a huge crack in the entire human race. Therefore, despite being angry at Jerusalem's request, the Shanhai Pass Management Committee finally decided to find Ashima and the others by all means. Even though he knew that it was impossible to find them, and he knew that the 2 guardian mansions, Taiyang and Taiyin, lacked the power to suppress them, Yao Guang still had to send a team to Changbai Mountain to search for traces of Ashima and the others. I discussed it with Lilith for a long time and felt that it was impossible to find Ashima and the others by relying on the Star Shuttle. We must send a rescue force on the ground. At this point, Yao Guang became particularly solemn. But that is the territory of the Wu people. The frequent movements of our Star Shuttle have aroused the vigilance of the Wu people. The 6 Star Shuttles I mentioned before have been shot down by the Wu people because they were taking pictures at a low altitude. After that, when we tried to send a second wave, we found that the sky was filled with the Wu people of the Dejiang and Xianming tribes. It would be extremely risky to send the swordbearers directly from the air. Instead, we can deceive people by setting off on the ground. Guhan snorted coldly. I'll say the rest for you. Because we have to set off on the ground to enter Changbai Mountain, and to enter Changbai Mountain, we need to pass through the large-scale settlements of 5 Wu people tribes. Even a 3-year-old child knows how much risk it will take. Therefore, you must choose the strongest and most resourceful swordbearers to go in case the others go in and can't come back. Speaking of the strongest and most resourceful swordbearers, you immediately thought of me. So, you hope that I can pass through the large-scale settlements of the Wu people and help you find them in Changbai Mountain, right? Guhan spoke without pausing. Obviously, he already knew Yao Guang's plan. Since you already know, I won't explain any further. If it's possible, I hope that you can set off now. Before the Wu people realize what's going on, quickly enter Changbai Mountain and rescue Ashima and the rest, Yao Guang said straightforwardly. Just me. Guhan narrowed his eyes and asked. Just you. Yao Guang's eyes widened. Are you guys crazy? Instead of using the mighty and invincible Miss Lionian Ling, you came to me, the guardian of the Sh*T planet. I think you should find someone else. Guhan said and made a gesture, gesturing for Yao Guang to leave his residence. We can't use Miss Ling. Yarrow Guang refused to leave. He counted with his fingers and said, Miss Ling has more than enough strength, but how should I put it, she's still lacking in quick-wittedness. Therefore, she's not the best candidate. Why don't you just say that she's stupid? Guhan sneered. But it doesn't matter if she's stupid. In the face of absolute power, everything is a joke. As long as she has the billion sword technique, there's nothing that Lionian Ling can't do. I don't accept this reason. You'd better give me another one. Fine. Yao Guang shrugged. The second reason is very simple. Since yesterday, outside the Suzaku planet's guardian zone, the Wu people's Grand Shaman, Xingtian, Yusha, and the other 2 Grand Shamans have been loitering outside. The great shaman of the sorcerer tribe, Xingtian, Yusha, and the other great shamans are loitering outside. I don't know why they didn't attack directly, but there's no doubt that the Sunstar's garrison area might face another attack from the sorcerer tribe at any moment. That barely counts as a reason. Guhan nodded, then shook his head. But that's not enough. You still haven't given me a decisive reason. Chapter 886. Yaoguang suddenly changed the topic and said to Juzi, who was standing behind Guhan, "This must be military governor's famous sword, Juzi sword. What's wrong? Is there something wrong with Juzi?" Guhan asked. No, I'm just curious. Lady Juzi should be the first sword maiden to appear in the world. Moreover, I remember that Brother Commander's ancient sword sword maiden, poor Lady Qing, was also the first Archean sword maiden to appear. Yaoguang said with a smile. Although Guhan didn't want anyone to know about Juzi sword or Chijian sword, Guhan should at least have a famous sword. Therefore, Guhan could only report the situation of Juzi sword to the Sword Council. Therefore, a natural famous sword appeared on the Sword Council's list of sword ladies. Of course, because the new issue of the famous sword record would only be published in 4 months, unless one specifically went to the Sword Council's official database to check, most people would not know that the Juzi sword was a new primordial sword maiden. From this, it could be seen that Yarrow Guang was very concerned about Guang Han. What's the point? Guhan squinted his eyes, not knowing what Yaoguang was up to. Brother military governor, you don't know. Although my family isn't famous, we have a hobby, and that is to collect all kinds of precious documents and ancient books. There are even many documents and ancient books that even the highest level of intelligence can't collect. At this point, Yaoguang paused. After realizing that Guhan didn't have any special reaction, he continued, "A few decades ago, my father took a risk and went to the ruins of Shanghai. In a small bookstore in the ruins, he found a very interesting novel. Unfortunately, most of the novel was damaged, and there were barely a dozen pages that could be distinguished. This made my father very sad, and he could only treasure it in the family's library. What do you want to tell me?" He had to admit that Yaoguang's ability to whet people's appetites was pretty good. Guhan's appetite had been whetted by Yaoguang. "It's like this. When I was young, I liked to play in the library, so I was lucky enough to see those 10 pages. I only felt that the story was a little boring, so I didn't take it to heart. But when I met you, brother military governor, and heard that your ancient sword sword mistress is the Qingpin sword, I suddenly felt that it sounded a little familiar, but I couldn't remember where I had seen it before. That's why I kept thinking about it whenever I had free time. Finally, I remembered that I saw the sword's name on that torn page." At this point, Yaoguang waved his hand, and the image of a broken page was projected on his personal terminal. However, the other parts of the page were heavily mosaic, and only a paragraph of text could be seen on one of the paragraphs. It was a very short paragraph that looked like a poem. 8 trigrams immortal robe flying purple chi, 3-pointed treasured sword, Qingping. Qingping sword. Qingpin sword. Seeing this name, Ji Yuhan's mind suddenly felt as if it had been hit by a heavy blow. After some time, Guhan finally cleared his mind. "What do you think this means?" Guhan acted as if nothing had happened. "It's just a sword that has the same name as my Qingpin sword." "Is that so? Then I might have misunderstood. I just thought that since the 2 names have the same pronunciation, could it be the same sword?" Yaoguang kept the page, and Guhan suddenly felt a sense of loss. Actually, as far as I know, many sword ladies' names were made up by later generations. Just like the Dragon Spring Empress, it was called the Dragon Spring Sword in all the ancient records after the Tang dynasty. However, it was only when the Dragon Spring lady herself said that we found out that her original name was the Dragon Spring Sword. Later on, this sword fell into the hands of the Tang dynasty's founding emperor, Li Yuan. Li Yuan was very fond of the Dragon Spring Sword, but the Dragon Spring Sword had a flaw. Its name had the word Yuan in it, which was a taboo with Li Yuan's Yuan. Thus, in order to avoid this opportunity, Li Yuan changed the Dragon Spring Sword into the Dragon Spring Sword. In the end, the Dragon Spring Sword replaced the original name of the Dragon Abyss Sword and became the true name of the Dragon Spring Goddess. Yao Guang was indeed very knowledgeable. A story that ordinary people would definitely not know easily came out of his mouth. This story was passed down during the early period of the Great Apocalypse. At that time, there was no cultural extinction yet, so the person who recorded this story had written down the cause and effect of the matter very clearly. In other words, the Dragon Spring Sword had always been called the Dragon Spring Sword. It was only after the Great Apocalypse that the Dragon Spring Lady became a sword lady that the wielder of the sword found out from the Dragon Spring Lady that the original name of the Dragon Spring Sword was Dragon Yuan. It was only after the Tang dynasty that it was changed to Dragon Spring. However, compared to the name Dragon Yuan, the Dragon Spring Lady preferred the current name of Dragon Spring. Thus, the Sword Committee completely changed the name of the Dragon Spring Sword to the Dragon Spring Sword. Now, only those who had read this story would know that the original name of the Dragon Spring Sword was the Dragon Spring Sword. P.S. This story is half true and half false. The Dragon Spring Sword was indeed changed to the Dragon Spring Sword. However, whether or not it was Li Yuan who changed the name is still debated. In addition, the real Dragon Spring Sword or the Dragon Spring Sword did not appear. Legend has it that it was buried in Li Yuan's Tangxian tomb. The tombs of the emperors of the Tang dynasty, especially those of the emperors of the early Tang dynasty, were relatively lucky. The country has never excavated the Tangxian tomb, so no one knows if the Dragon Spring Sword is there or not. They were clearly talking about the Qingpin sword, but Yao Guang talked a lot about the Dragon Spring Sword. It was a little strange, but Guhan understood Yao Guang's meaning. Yao Guang's meaning was very simple. If the Dragon Spring Sword could be changed to the Dragon Spring Sword by an emperor, then why couldn't the Qingpin sword be changed to the Qingpin sword? Moreover, this sword was originally an ancient sword of the Liunyan clan. The name Qingpin sword was also passed down by the Liunyan clan. Guhan had only determined the name of the Qingpin sword through the status panel in the game Sword Lady Online. In other words, the name Qingpin sword was decided by the Liunyan clan. If the Liunyan clan wanted to change the name of the Qingpin sword, everyone would be kept in the dark. No one would know the truth. Most importantly, the Qingpin sword was too strange. She did not look like an ancient sword or a sword lady. From the form and power of the young girl Qingpin, it would not be an exaggeration to say that the Qingpin sword was a spirit sword or even a celestial sword lady. Moreover, the poor girl had requested Ji Yu Han to use all of the sorcerer tribe's blood essence and the 12 ancestors of sorcerer's blood essence to recover her own power. Putting aside the fact that the entire sorcerer tribe's power was equivalent to 1 or 2 emperor sword level swordbearers, the 12 ancestors of sorcerer alone were equivalent to 12 emperor sword level swordbearers. The young girl Qingpin sword actually needed such a powerful blood essence to recover her power. The young girl Qingpin swords was probably at least an emperor sword lady, so was the Qingpin sword really the Qingping sword? If the Qingpin sword was the Qingping sword, then where did the real Qingping sword come from? Why had she shrunk her body into the shape of a cute young girl and split her consciousness into two? Most importantly, if the Qingping sword relied on sucking the Wu people's blood to recover its power, what would happen to the cute Qingpin sword? All of Guhan's questions could only be answered on those damned mosaicked pages. Of course, there were only a dozen or so pages, so it was possible that this page did not contain the answers that Guhan was looking for. But who could guarantee that these pages did not contain the answers? As such, in that instant, Yao Guang had a hold on Guhan's weak spot. Yao Guang had no way of retaliating, and he couldn't even find a way to resist. Even if Guhan wanted to forcefully seize it, he wouldn't be able to do so. After all, it was just a bunch of data. A light-shaking realm cultivator could destroy all of it with a single thought. You win. Give me all of the pages, and I'll go to Changbai Mountain and save Ashima and the others. In the end, Guhan still lost to Yao Guang, or rather, he lost to his love for Qingpin. Thank you. Yao Guang laughed. But I was just joking. Even if Brother Military Governor doesn't want to go to Changbai Mountain, I can't really threaten you with these pages. Even if Brother Military Governor decides not to go, I will still give these pages to Brother Military Governor. After all, our comradeship is more important than anything else. As Yao Guang spoke, he lightly tapped Guhan's gadget. Guhan's gadget notified that Guhan had received a new document. Guhan glanced at it and found that it was indeed a picture of a dozen or so pages that hadn't been censored. This Yaoguang really knows himself too well. Why do I feel like he's even more astute than I am? Guhan pursed his lips. If he really wanted to give them to him, why would he bother censoring them? Obviously, this light-shaking realm cultivator knew that Su Chen was a man of his word, so he purposefully did him a favor. He was simply handing over the reward that Guhan was supposed to receive to Su Chen in advance. However, Guhan believed that even if he hadn't agreed to Yaoguang's deal, Yaoguang would still have given these pages to Guhan in the end. This was because only Guhan desperately needed these pages, but they were of no use to anyone else. If Guhan hadn't agreed to Yaoguang's deal in the end, then Yaoguang wouldn't have received any benefits from these pages. Instead, he would have developed a grudge against Guhan because of the failure of this deal, ruining the hard-earned relationship between Yaoguang and Guhan. On the other hand, if Yaoguang still gave the pages to Guhan in the end, then even if Guhan didn't go to Changbai Mountain, Guhan would still owe Yaoguang a huge favor. Sooner or later, Yaoguang would return this favor. Therefore, no matter what the result of Yaoguang's move was, he would still have profited. Only Guhan would have lost a lot of money. Chapter 887. Yaoguang left a token for Guhan before he left the Shixing garrison. It was a mission token unique to Shanhai Pass. The electronic card in the token recorded all the information related to the mission in detail, as well as the rewards that could be obtained after the mission was completed. Some people might think that the mission token was unnecessary. All one had to do was record the detailed information when accepting the mission. Why would there be an unnecessary mission token? The reason was simple. Many of the missions issued in Shanhai Pass were more complicated, and many of them could not be used to prove that the sword-bearer had completed the mission. For example, the simplest patrol mission required the sword-bearer to patrol a specific area. However, if the sword-bearer found a place to sleep for a night and came back the next day saying that they had completed the patrol, nobody could prove that the sword-bearer had completed the mission. Outside of Shanhai Pass, one could rely on the records of the personal terminal to determine whether the mission had been completed or not. However, in Shanhai Pass, as long as one left the amplification tower of the Guardian's residence, the functions of the personal terminal with dimensional alloy would be greatly suppressed by the power of the stars. Many functions could not be realized, and it could not record the sword-bearer's completion of the mission. Hence, the mission token was born. The mission token was made of a new type of material. Although it could not communicate with the outside world, its main function was not suppressed by the power of the stars. It could record a lot of necessary information in detail, which could be used to determine whether the mission had been completed or not. For example, the mission token that Yaoguang had left behind was in Guhan's hand. Guhan took a closer look at the information in the token. The mission information was the same as what Yaoguang had said. Guhan was required to head to Changbai Mountain to find clues about the missing Ashima and the others. The time limit was 5 days. As long as he stayed in Changbai Mountain for 5 days, the mission would be considered completed even if he did not find Ashima. Guhan could then return to the Guardian's residence. If Guhan could successfully bring Ashima and the others back, or bring Ashima's corpse back, there would naturally be no need for a mission token to confirm whether Guhan had completed the mission. However, if Guhan had not found Ashima and the others and had only wandered around Changbai Mountain for 5 days, the record on the mission token would be extremely important. This was the only evidence that could confirm that Guhan had indeed been searching in Changbai Mountain for 5 days. However, the only thing that excited the wielder was the mission reward. Compared to the meager daily salary, the mission rewards issued by the Guardian Mansion were extremely generous. Even the simplest patrol mission was equivalent to a month's daily salary, let alone some of the more dangerous missions. The mission that Guhan received required him to pass through 5 areas controlled by the Wu people's tribes, so the risk factor was terrifying. Ordinary wielder who accepted this mission would most likely die, so naturally, the reward for this mission was very generous. First of all, there was a reward of 10 million yuan. However, For Guhan, who already had hundreds of billions of yuan, the reward was still not that big of a deal. What really tempted Guhan was the hero coin reward. There were a total of 1 million hero coins, which was enough for Guhan to deepen the Chijian sword and the Juzi sword to the 3rd grade. He would then be able to activate all skills apart from ultimate skills. There were many other values in the hero coin, and it was not necessary to exchange all of them for the marks needed to deepen the sword mark. Guhan could also purchase many rare resources from the wielder's shop, such as buying 100 cute dolls at the price of 10,000 hero coins and enjoying the pleasure of being the king of a harem. Other than renminbi and hero coins, the most precious thing was merit points. Merit points could not be exchanged for anything, but they were the greatest proof that the Guardians could use to increase their level. In most cases, after the Guardian's direct superior died in battle or left the Shanhai Pass after 3 years, the position that could allow the Guardian to be promoted would naturally be empty. As for the Guardians under the superior's command, it would depend on the number of merit points they had. The higher the number, the higher their path would be. For example, after Liuonian Ling killed 3 great wizards in one fell swoop, she directly received 3 million merit points. This number was only slightly less than Lilith's merit points. After Lilith died in battle or left the Shanhai Pass, the next Guardian of the Sun would definitely be Liuonian Ling. It was a pity that Guhan had clearly fought against the 2 great wizards, Xingtian and Yusha. Unfortunately, the only witness, Xiao Mian, was inexperienced and biased against Guhan, so he did not recognize Xingtian at all. Otherwise, Guhan's current merit points would be around 1 million, which was more than enough to be a guardian of the main planet. This mission gave Ji Yu Han 500,000 merit points. If Ji Yu Han could complete this mission, he would be able to leave the T-Star Guardian Mansion in the near future. It was a place that made people's balls ache just by hearing its name. Pack up. Get ready to leave. According to Yao Guang's request, Guhan had to leave within half an hour after receiving the mission. Therefore, everything seemed a little rushed. Guhan even went to the Sanshuian garrison at the last minute and bought a lot of dry food from the vending machine there. Unfortunately, there was only dry food. There was no meat, which Qingpin loved, and there was no wine, which Yitian wanted. When Guhan returned from the Sanshuian garrison, he found a valiant-looking swordbearer standing next to his residence. Leslie Dracula, what are you doing here? Guhan realized that this swordbearer was actually Leslie Dracula, who had been assigned to the Baihu Imperial Planet Tongue Planet garrison. Lord Guardian of the T planet with a unique smell. I was transferred here by Master Yaoguang himself. Leslie Dracula waved the transfer order in her hand. Clearly, the words Guardian of the T planet made her very happy. Master Yaoguang said that you are loyal and courageous, and that you are going to save Ashima and the others alone. But this way, the Sanshuian garrison will only have 2 swordbearers left. It is too dangerous, so he transferred me to the Starscreen garrison next to yours. From now on, we will be neighbors. Hello, neighbor. Goodbye, neighbor. Ji Yu Han turned a blind eye to Leslie Dracula. He kept his guardian mansion back into the spaceball and released his water droplet hovering flying car. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared in front of Leslie Dracula. This unromantic T. Leslie Dracula was so angry that she kicked Guhan's T planet throne. The throne was unexpectedly sturdy, and Leslie Dracula's little foot hurt. Where are we going? After being released from Ji Yu Han's dimensional pocket, Ji Yu Xuanwu asked in a baffled manner. She realized that Guhan, who had insisted that he could not leave the garrison residence, was now sitting on her droplet hovercraft and heading towards the depths of Shanhai Pass. Don't mess with me, I need to go out and do something. Don't worry, once this is done, I will immediately go to your house on the way. After Ji Yu Han said this, he no longer paid attention to Ji Yu Xuanwu. He focused all his attention on the dozen or so photos in his hands. Guhan repeatedly looked through the photos inside and out, and could only sigh helplessly. Not only did these photos not solve Guhan's doubts, but they also made Guhan even more confused. Although there were more than a dozen broken pages, the words in these pages were not completely clear. At least one half of the words had disappeared, and the remaining words were also missing one by one. Gu-han had to rely on his imagination to barely understand what was being said. After repeatedly thinking about it, Gu-han finally understood the contents of these pages. First of all, this page seemed to be a novel, and it was a vernacular novel from the Middle Ages. This was because the writing naturally exuded a flavor that only novels would have. Normal history books or mythological books would not have such a flavor. Secondly, this novel described the earliest period of the Middle Ages. The story happened in the Shang and Zhou dynasties. As for who the main character of the story was, Gu-han was not clear. He only vaguely saw the complete names of Jiang Xia, Yang Jian, King Zhu, and a few others. The names of the other characters had long been missing, at most with only one word left. Gu-han could not guess who the characters were at all. These dozens of pages were not continuous. According to some of the incomplete page numbers, these dozens of pages had at least 3 different contents. The first part said that Jiang Xia was fishing in a certain place, and then he was discovered by a big shot, who respectfully invited him back to be a military advisor. The second part said that a man named Yang Jian found a secret book called 8-9 Mysteries in a cave, and then he was accepted as a disciple by someone. The last part was the words that appeared in Qing Ping. It was a long poem of 7 words, and the full text was as follows: opening up the earth and opening up the sky, discussing the scriptures and laws, touring the capital, passing on the 5 qis to the origin, gathering the 3 flowers over the head to perform Wu Sheng. The golden light on the top splits into 5 colors, and the red lotus under the feet chases 10,000 miles. The 8 trigrams immortal robe flies purple qi, and the treasured sword with 3 points is called Qing Ping. Subduing tigers and subduing dragons is the first, capturing demons and restraining monsters is unhindered. There are about 3,000 disciples, and the following are all elites. Heavenly flowers fall with infinite wonders, and the earth embraces the golden lotus. Purifying all to produce positive results, and cultivating the right path belongs to silence. Through this poem, one could guess that the Qing Ping sword should be the sword of a supermaster, and this supermaster should be a master of Taoism, who seemed to have very strong magic power, and also had 3,000 disciples. In short, this poem was used to boast about how powerful this supermaster was. Unfortunately, this poem was not complete. There should be another part of the poem, but the ink marks of these lines had long dissipated in the passage of time, so it was impossible to know what was said after the poem. What was even more tragic was that the text before and after this poem was almost gone. Only the full text of the poem had a sentence, regardless of category, accepting all of them indiscriminately. How can one become an immortal when it comes to the depth of one's root? It was still vaguely visible. However, Gu-han could not guess what this sentence meant. Who was it referring to accepting disciples indiscriminately? Was it the owner of the Qing Ping sword who was criticizing others? Or was it someone else who was criticizing the owner of the Qing Ping sword? Chapter 888. This Yaoguang has no valuable clues other than this poem on the love pages. He actually tricked me into risking my life for him. Gu-han stuffed these pictures back into his personal terminal and spat at Yaoguang. But it seems that the owner of the Qingping sword should be a famous figure in Taoism, or a deity in Taoism. I wonder where that kid from the Wu-Tang lineage is now. If I can see the Taoist scriptures in his house, I might be able to find some useful clues. Gu-han could not help but think of the grandfather and grandson pair from the Wu-Tang lineage he met when he was looking for the IOUs. Their room was already filled with Taoist scriptures that had been preserved from the Wu-Tang mountain. Unfortunately, his attention was not on those Taoist books at that time. If Gu-han could read all those scriptures, he would definitely be able to find clues about the Qingping sword. Looks like I have to look for that kid from the Wu-Tang lineage after returning to Yangjing City, Gu-han said to himself secretly. It was also at this moment that Gu-han suddenly felt the flying droplet shake, as if it had been attacked by something. Because all of Gu-han's attention was focused on reading the remnant pages, he turned on the autopilot function of the flying droplet and let it fly automatically. As a result, Gu-han was so engrossed in reading the remnant pages that when the flying droplet entered the actual control area of the Wu people, he did not start to manually control the underwater flying droplet, nor did he avoid the tribes where the Wu people lived. The result was naturally very tragic. How could the Wu people ignore a human creation that flew over their heads? So the Wu people on the ground began to snipe the audacious flying droplet. The Wu people's fighting tools were very primitive. Their melee weapons were only sabers and swords, and their long-range weapons were only simple bows or even slingshots. However, these simple bows and arrows should not be underestimated, because these bows and arrows were attached with the unique wizard power of the Wu people. Any arrow rain could easily penetrate a dimensional alloy within 3 millimeters. Note that I'm talking about dimensional alloy, not ordinary metal. Because no matter how thick ordinary metals were, they could not stop Wu people's weapons at all. It was as if they did not exist. Because of this, when Guhan discovered that the arrows shot by Wu people could only leave a shallow mark on the outer shell of the flying car before losing all their strength and falling to the ground, Guhan finally understood that the material of the flying car could actually resist Yuan Ku's attack. The droplet flying car was a creation of the previous generation of humans tens of millions of years ago. Not only did it possess the space-folding technology that could only be created with dimensional crystals, but its outer shell could also defend against Yuan Ku's attack like a dimensional alloy. Didn't this prove that the previous generation of humans had also mastered the technology of dimensional alloys? And the reason why they had the technology of dimensional alloys, was there also an enemy like Yuan Ku? What if this wasn't the first time Yuan Ku had visited and attacked Earth? Then did the previous generation of humans eventually perish because of Yuan Ku's attack? But now was not the time to think about these questions. The most important thing now was to find a way to get rid of these Wu people. Although the arrows of the sorcerer tribe could only leave a shallow mark on the flying droplet, it was not enough to cause fatal damage to the flying droplet. But this was because the attacking Wu people were not powerful Wu people, just some junior and intermediate sorcerers. There was not even a heaven sorcerer. Of course, this was not strange, because the Wu people had always placed the weak clansmen in the periphery, and the powerful clansmen stayed in the core area, so that they could support any position and any place at any time. But it was only for now. Soon, the heaven sorcerers and even great sorcerers inside would receive the warning and move out together to deal with this reckless human flying car. Attention! I'm going to speed up. Guhan turned his head and said to Jiyu Xuanwu, who was beside him. Before Jiyu Xuanwu could react to what was happening, he felt a huge force pushing him, and then he was lying on the ground. Through the windows on both sides, he could see that the trees that could be seen clearly had become rows of afterimages. Based on these afterimages, Jiyu Xuanwu seriously suspected that the flying car had reached a speed of about 1,500 km per hour. A speed of 1,500 km per hour was already the maximum speed a flying car could reach. The Yang Huang 3008 boasted that its maximum speed was 2,000 km per hour, but that was only in theory on a perfect track. In such a complex terrain filled with forests, the Yang Huang 3008 was already doing its best to reach a speed of 200 km per hour. If the controls were not right, it could crash into a tree. If the tree was slightly thicker, then the car would be destroyed and people would die. Guhan had actually reached a speed of 1,500 km per hour in the forest. Had Guhan gone crazy? Of course, Guhan was not crazy, because at this time, Guhan had already used the Green Lotus White Root Body ability. With his ability to control everything 100 times, even at 1,500 km per hour, Guhan's surroundings were still in a slow-motion state. It was like when you were playing LOL and suddenly realized that the speed of the game had been slowed down by 10 times. In such a state, you might not be able to hit your target with any directional skills. Therefore, for Guhan at this time, it was not a difficult task to maneuver a flying car at 1,500 km per hour to avoid the obstacles in the forest. The sorcerers who were chasing after the flying droplet were stunned. Their prey seemed to have been loaded with a rocket. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared from their sight, as if the flying droplet did not exist at all. And so, the day that was called a disgrace by the majority of the sorcerer tribe happened. A human hover car swaggered through their territory, but they could not even stop it. They could only watch as it brushed past them in an instant. The entire line of defense of the Wu people was completely penetrated by the hover car. Naturally, this matter could not be concealed. Very quickly, it was reported to the higher levels, and finally reached the ears of the Wu people's leaders, the Grand Shamans. Facing this hover car at 1,500 km per hour, even the Grand Shamans felt a headache. This was because even the Grand Shamans could not catch up to this speed. Most of the Grand Shamans were good at hand-to-hand combat, not things like speed. "Let me do it." A Grand Shaman with a bow and arrow stood up, flicked the bowstring in his hand, and said proudly and confidently, "No matter how fast he is, he definitely cannot be faster than my bow and arrow." "Don't tell me you want to use the sun-shooting bow and sunset arrow?" The Grand Shaman Rain Master said in surprise. "Why? Why not?" Hu Yi returned with a question. "Wouldn't that be too wasteful?" The Rain Master stroked his beard. "Your sun-shooting bow and sunset arrow can only be used once a month. Once you use them, you will have to wait for another month. If the humans do anything strange, without your bow and arrow as a deterrent, I'm afraid there will be problems. No matter how big the problem is, it's not as big as this little bug in front of me." Hu Yi ignored the Rain Master's words, and directly started to nock his bow. He was clearly in the center of the Wu people's territory, and was hundreds of kilometers away from Guhan's flying car. Moreover, his target was a flying rocket at 1,500 kilometers per hour. Did he still want to shoot Guhan here? "I think it's better to keep a trump card," the Rain Master advised. "It's fine, didn't Xingtian say that the Qingping sword has appeared? All we need to do now is wait for that man to come to us." With that said, Hu Yi loosened his fingers slightly. The sunset arrow on the sun-shooting bow tore through the sky like a meteor. It flew towards an unknown direction in the distance. If one were to use the naked eye to estimate the speed of the sunset arrow, it would probably exceed the terrifying speed of 10,000 km per hour. This was a speed that exceeded the speed of sound by more than 10 times. "They're already dead," Hu Yi said confidently as he put down the bow and arrow in his hand. "Yes, they're already dead." The Rain Master agreed with Hu Yi's words. Back then, even the Golden Crow had died under Hu Yi's arrows, let alone a small human aircraft. The moment Hu Yi shot the arrow, Guhan's back instantly broke out in a cold sweat. This feeling was as if he was being targeted by hundreds of wild beasts, as if these wild beasts would pounce on him the next moment and tear him into pieces. It's Great Shaman Hu Yi's sun-shooting bow and sunset arrow. After a few minutes, Guhan found out the source of his cold sweat. It turned out that Great Shaman Hu Yi, who was hundreds of kilometers away, had shot his godly arrow at him. Great Shaman Hu Yi was definitely the most feared Great Shaman among the human swordbearers in Shanhai Pass. He was also the only Great Shaman who could snipe an enemy from thousands of kilometers away, and was also the Great Shaman with the most terrifying single-target explosive power. In the history of Shanhai Pass, there were very few famous swordbearers who could block Hu Yi's arrow with their own strength. Apart from the Guardians of the Sun Star and the Moon Star, who could mobilize half of the power of the Ju Tian Star battle formation to block this arrow, the other famous swordbearers would die the moment they were targeted by Hu Yi. There was no other possibility. Fortunately, Hu Yi's arrow could not be shot at any time. Once the sunset arrow was shot, it would disappear completely, and the user would have to wait for a month to recover. Therefore, Hu Yi could only shoot one arrow every month. In reality, most of the time, this arrow was left as a final threat. It was possible that Hu Yi could not shoot a sunset arrow even after a year. What made Hong Yu feel lucky was that, at the last moment of the battle, Hu Yi did not shoot her arrow. Otherwise, she would have died on the spot, and there would be no chance for her to survive. The sunset arrow, which Hu Yi had been reluctant to shoot, was aimed at Guhan without any hesitation. This made Guhan, who realized that the sunset arrow had appeared behind him, curse out loud. Even though his control over everything had increased by 100 times, the sunset arrow, which was flying at 10,000 km per hour, was still as fast as a speeding car to Guhan. It was not easy to dodge it. Chapter 889. I'll turn. Guhan controlled the flying droplet to suddenly make a sharp turn, trying to escape from the sunset arrow's attack line. But unexpectedly, this sunset arrow actually had its own tracking function. As soon as Guhan made a turn, the sunset arrow also followed, like a homing guided missile before the apocalypse. I can't dodge it. Guhan immediately made this judgment. The speed of the sunset arrow was more than 7 times that of the water drop cart. In order to dodge this arrow, Guhan would need to increase the cart's speed to at least 5,000 km per hour. Only then would he have a chance of dodging the arrow. Otherwise, he would only be a live target that would be hit by it. I can't let the flying droplet be damaged. Guhan immediately made a decision in his heart. The flying droplet's black technology was far higher than the other flying droplet. This kind of treasure that couldn't be bought even with 100 million hero coins, how could it be damaged by a sunset arrow? Instead of letting the flying droplet bear the damage, it was better to let himself bear it. At the moment when he thought of this, Guhan put the flying droplet into his dimensional pocket, and then pushed Jiyu Xuanwu, who didn't understand what was happening, and shouted, "Run as far as you can." He held the Chijian sword in his hand and waited silently in the same place, watching the golden sunset arrow flying towards him. Although Sword Maiden Online had scanned part of the Chijian sword's ability, there was a very key ability of the Chijian sword that hadn't been scanned, and that was the invincible defense ability of the Chijian sword. In the previous battle with the angel, Guhan had used this ability, in the face of a meteor-level super big move. In order to prepare this big move, the angel even turned Guhan into a demon emperor, a race that needed to bear 10 times the angel's strength. Then it was a super big move that gathered all the strength. Even a spirit sword level sword wielder would probably have his shield broken if he was hit by such a big move. But Guhan was able to take it without any damage while holding the Chijian sword. Of course, there was a price to pay, and the price was that the 260 points of sword element of Guhan disappeared forever. This was an ability that was left out by Sword Maiden Online, which could rely on consuming the upper limit of the sword element of the sword wielder to resist extremely powerful attacks. Guhan estimated that this ability could be classified as a sword Dao characteristic. In this way, the Chijian sword had an unprecedented 3 different sword Dao characteristics. As for why Sword Maiden Online left out this ability, only God knew. P.S. Fine, I'm not digging a hole. It's just that I forgot about it when I was writing the Sword Maiden's attribute sheet. It's so embarrassing. Author, please slap yourself. Therefore, under normal circumstances, Guhan was too lazy to use the Chijian sword to fight. Otherwise, he would have to consume the upper limit of his sword element, and no one could stand it. Until facing the super powerful arrow of the sunset arrow, Guhan could only take out the Chijian sword. In fact, when Guhan retrieved the droplet flying car and the sunset arrow hit the target, there were only a few seconds. In these few seconds, the Jiyu Xuanwu didn't even run a few hundred meters before he saw a golden laser-like light hit Guhan's body. Then it instantly bloomed with a huge amount of energy. A ripple-like shock wave with Guhan as the core rushed towards everything in the surroundings. Everything around Guhan, even if it was a huge tree as thick as a few people, was as fragile as a toothpick under this shockwave. It was easily broken and then blown a few kilometers away. The moment the shockwave hit the Jiyu Xuanwu could only mobilize the strength of his whole body to create an umbrella-shaped shockwave, barely blocking the attack power of the shockwave. However, his body was unable to withstand the huge thrust and was blown a few hundred meters away. Finally, he crashed into a huge tree and stopped. The force of this impact was too strong. It was like a small nuclear weapon had exploded. Dad. The moment his body stabilized, the Jiyu Xuanwu didn't care what kind of name he was calling out. He rushed out impatiently towards the place where Guhan and the sunset arrow collided. At this moment, the Jiyu Xuanwu was very anxious. The Jiyu Xuanwu knew very well that if he was the one who was hit by such a powerful force, then the Jiyu Xuanwu's bones would have melted by now. Dad. Please be all right. I might only have you as my family. The Jiyu Xuanwu lamented in his heart. How is this possible? Hu Yi, who was chatting with Rain Master in the hall, suddenly stood up from his chair as if he had seen a ghost. He didn't even hold the bow in his hand properly and it fell to the ground with a clang. His handsome face was filled with shock and disbelief. What's wrong? Are the humans starting to take revenge? Rainmaster saw Hu Yi's expression as if he had seen a ghost and thought that the humans were starting to counterattack. No. It has nothing to do with the humans' counterattack. It's my sunset arrow. It failed. Hu Yi said dispiritedly. Failed? Don't tell me someone can dodge your arrow. The Rainmaster said as if he was telling a joke. He didn't dodge at all. He endured it. Hu Yi clenched his fists. You're not joking, right? Could it be that the person who charged into our tribe is the descendant of that bloodline? Rainmaster immediately became nervous. If the bloodline of the Liu Nian clan charged into the territory of the Wu people, then it would be extremely dangerous. In history, the bloodline of the Liu Nian clan had killed their way into the territory of the Wu people dozens of times and turned the entire Wu people upside down. All the tribes kept quiet out of fear. Only the people of the Liu Nian clan could use their 100 million sword art to take the setting sun arrow head-on. However, even the Liu Nian clan would be heavily injured after taking the sunset arrow and return to the Guardian residence. They did not dare to stay in the territory of the Wu people any longer. No. It's a man, Hu Yi answered dryly. They had already received information that the descendant of that bloodline was a girl. That's good. As long as it's not that bloodline. Rainmaster was halfway through his sentence when his expression suddenly changed. This is bad. This is not good. This is not good. Just that bloodline is enough for us to deal with. If there's another opponent who's similar to her, the shaman tribe will really be turned upside down. About the same level? Hu Yi smiled bitterly. He's far weaker than that bloodline. I think he's at least 5 or 6 times weaker. That's impossible. How can he take your sunset arrow when it's 5 or 6 times weaker? Rainmaster was confused about what Hu Yi was talking about. I said it's 5 or 6 times weaker, not 5 or 6 times weaker. Hu Yi stared in Guhan's direction, his heart filled with worry. He's probably 5 or 6 times stronger than that bloodline. My sunset arrow didn't even consume 2% of the energy of that damned human's shield. Dad. Seeing that Guhan was standing there unharmed, Jiyu Xuanwu was extremely excited. He rushed into Guhan's embrace and even rubbed against Guhan's body like a harmonious father and daughter. However, Jiyu Xuanwu quickly reacted and awkwardly pulled himself out of Guhan's embrace. He lowered his head and tried his best to hide the blush on his face. Then, he scolded himself in his heart. Why did he throw himself into the arms of such a bad man? You think of him as your father, but does he think of you as his daughter? It actually consumed more than 570 quarks of sword essence. What Jiyu Xuanwu did not know was that Guhan's attention was not on her at all. At this time, Guhan was silently estimating the loss of sword essence in his body. When he faced the meteor angel last time, Guhan lost 260 quarks of sword essence. However, the loss this time was obviously much greater than the previous time. He had lost more than 570 quarks of sword essence. In terms of pure attack power, the Sunset Arrow's attack power was more than twice that of the Angel Gloria's ultimate attack. In terms of level, the Great Wizard of the Wu people and Gloria were both meteor level Yuan Ku. However, in terms of the most powerful explosive power, they were 2 times weaker. It seemed that the overall strength of the Wu people was above that of the angel race. If such a powerful race that was filled with hatred for humans broke away from the shackles of the Ju Tian star battle formation, how painful would it be for humans? Let's go. The other Wu people will catch up soon. We can't waste time here. After thinking about it, Guhan grabbed the small hand of Jiyu Xuanwu, who had lowered her head to hide her embarrassment. At the same time, he released the water drop flying car again. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the forest that looked like it had been hit by a meteorite. 10 minutes later, the water drop flying car entered a vast forest full of white snow. This also meant that Guhan had finally arrived at the foot of Changbai Mountain. He was only less than a few dozen kilometers away from the place where he found Ashima's robe. Changbai Mountain was a snowy mountain. At the foot of Changbai Mountain, some trees could still be vaguely seen, as well as the spots of green that these trees had. However, If one climbed all the way up Changbai Mountain, the green would soon disappear completely, replaced by a vast expanse of white. Even the trees that were originally green would be covered by snow all year round. This was also the reason why it was named Changbai Mountain. It meant that the mountain was always white all year round. The moment they entered Changbai Mountain, Guhan's green lotus white root body completely disintegrated. At the same time, a sense of mania began to wreak havoc in Guhan's body. This was a kind of mania that did not distinguish between friend and foe. When this sense of mania was at its strongest, Guhan even had an impulse to kill everything around him, such as Jiyu Xuanwu. For a moment, Guhan even wanted to strangle her neck, but this idea was quickly suppressed by Guhan's rationality. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,